Morning, everybody. Let's start proceedings with the karakia.
Whakatau ki te uru, whakatau ki te tonga, kia mā kina kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai, e hiapi ana te atakura, e tio, e huka, e hauru, tihei maurimo.
Informing everybody that we're live streaming and just to be aware of that. And as we say at the opening of all meetings, please make sure that you keep your session to the time and remind everybody that criticism and disrespect of elected members and staff be the halting of discussion from that point in time. If it gets out of hand. Right, okay, we're doing apologies now, and I've got an apology for lateness from Asif. I can have a mover and a seconder if there's any. Okay, Tyrone and Ruben, thank you. Declarations of interest. Oh, yes, and everybody in favour of that? Aye. Yes. We have a declaration of interests that I need to state. I am a member of the Little River Wairewa Community Trust.
I've been interested in item 8.
Is there anything else people would like to declare, or they can declare as a and steadfast for Kathy?
So is that 10 or 11 or both?
Oh.
Yeah. So the case by results there is quite different.
Roger?
Yeah, possibly the Museum Advisory Committee. I'm a liaison, but I was the previous chair, current chair. And obviously later on with the French Fest. You can do the French Fest as well as
Item 14 consent.
I will funding for the French.
If that's everything, we've just go to proclamations of the
I'm sure there's going to be others.
previous years. We'll just pop up, stick your hand up and say confirmation of previous minutes. And they have a mover and a seconder. Yes. Okay, so that was Ruben and Tyrone, and all those in favour?
Aye.
Thank you. Moving on to public forum. Just another reminder that you're being live streamed, and welcome to the Church Bay Neighbourhood Association. We've got Ian and Belinda Curry and Nahana Suzanne Carter. Is that correct? Ian's right here, obviously. So come on up and talk to us on behalf of Church Bay Neighbourhood Association.
Te rangi te whenua te whare te iwi, tēnā koutou katoa. Te mihi tēnei ki a koutou. Kai te mihi, nō reira, anei mauwa.
Kia ora koutou, I'm Belinda Uhana. Thank you for letting us come to your meeting today to present something that we've been working on for quite a while and are now making some headway on, and we'd like to show you what we've done with it and also to thank the board for their support. So it's kaioruru signage, and yeah, this is where we're going. So in 2020, Church Bay Neighbourhood Association started planning to install a kaioruru sign due to local resident desire for bilingual signage. In mid-2020, we contacted a CCC road team, and CCC advised us to give CCC some time to attain a consistent policy regarding bilingual road signage. And there was a little bit of toing and froing with that. And yeah, so that's where we were. CBNA liaised with mana whenua, Ngāti Wheki, and got a quote obtained from Road Signs and Traffic Control Limited, RTL, for supply only of a sign to match the existing Church Bay sign. We thought we could fund it ourselves. No funding has or will be requested from CCC. We'll fund the signage. CBNA have consulted with CCC staff, Nanaya Cunningham, Principal Advisor of Tiriti Relationships, and Liz Wigan, face to face today. And we also have the submission to the August CCC Public Forum today. So this is the existing signage, and we thought we could have Kaiururu somewhere. We're just noticing everyone's calling it Kaiururu. And there it is. Lucy, my daughter, she did some photoshopping and actually popped it up there. And yeah, so there it is. That's the proposed signage at this end of Church Bay, which is this end coming from Littleton, and also for the other end too, coming into Church Bay, Kaiururu from Diamond Harbour. Huhana liaised with Ngāti Whiki, Rapaki, and we got very positive support from them. So you can see they said we won't be able to visit because it was the sale, wasn't it?
Sale GP. So we intended to go to the Rūnaka meeting, coming face to face, so that we could explain. But anyway, they approved it, but they also referred to the official name of that area, because what happens is Ngāi Tahu have a cultural mapping that's available for the public to look at the actual official names of all of the areas, and that's available for anyone. So anyway, they gave us the go-ahead that was, and the correct spelling, because sometimes it has hyphens and macrons, but it's Kaiururu straight through, and this is from them.
It was also interesting to note that the New Zealand Gazette says that the name Church Bay is not actually official. So that was a very little interesting bit of history that we found out too. And that it's not. They also suggested that Kaiururu is the food of the ruru, the little owl, not eating of it. So they were just giving us that, which we thought was a good to note too.
We'd have the clarification there.
Yeah. So that, and they also said thanks for the name is official because it's on the Kaitahu cultural mapping, which is very easy to look up and use. You can find the name of lots of places in the South Island. It's fantastic. So they said you can just go ahead with your proposal. We appreciate your awareness. So that's cool. And this is just the page with Kaiururu on it, on the Ngāi Tahu cultural mapping page. And you can see it's loud and clear. There it is.
And it also, that particular website goes to many websites and references. So there's the reference there of the original naming of it. And we got a quote. Can we flip to the next one? Thanks. So we thought we were funding it, but we've heard Liz today that council are prepared to fund it, and we're very grateful for that. So that wasn't the issue, to be honest. Okay, thank you. So really, we're just wanting to have board support. We're grateful of all the work that you do. And we have one last question. We're aware of the time frame. So has the council actually formulated a consistent policy regarding the bilingual road signage? Through this submission, it appears that there's a number of steps and process to take. And the takiwa of Ngāi Tahu is, Ngāi Tahu being the mana whenua of the majority of the Waipainaway, we need to refer to the Ngāi Tahu cultural mapping reference for the official name, consult with mana whenua, and in this case with the hapu o Ngāti Whiki over in Raupaki, and then of course traffic operations to produce and install that standardised sign. And it could actually be a precedent for looking at other place names within the area. So, he mihi tēnei kia koutou. Nō reira, ko hipa te wā, the time is gone, so kia ora.
Thank you so much, Belinda and Johanna. Really appreciate your time. It's exciting. Looking forward to seeing some.
Yeah.
You have a question, don't you?
I did have a question.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, and I know there's on other parts of the peninsula there's a drive to have that. I don't know what the council says. I just have one question. It seems to be very supportive from what I've seen around the Christchurch. You say the Mariah said that they didn't like the support of the eating owls, which is I don't know if you ever try means food. So what was the conversation that followed that?
The food, it's food. It's a little bay where the ruru fed, rather than
Right, the birds
where
feed
we
there
feed on.
rather than eat. Okay, thank
I
you.
don't want to clarify that.
Yeah, they just.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Sorry, I just had one quick question, or two very quick questions. One, first one is just the hierarchy of whether it should be Māori and English or English and Māori.
Yeah.
Photoshop looks after
Yeah.
policy. I think typically we go Māori.
Absolutely.
And the other
That's in
was,
the policy.
Oh, I don't know, but it might be.
yeah.
Well, we
I think it's in draft.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's not my question.
And the only other observation was rather than having two separate signs, whether symbolically it's better to actually have one sign that has two languages on it.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
Wonderful.
The signage will be changed to green and white, like standardised sign. So we've got traffic operations here, so they'll have to be about getting it. And usually,
Exciting stuff. Okay. Next, we've got deputations by appointment. We've got Cass Bay Resident Association, Jenny Feely, here to speak to us today.
haven't we got somebody who's been doing the following?
I was meant to just speak on behalf of the Cass Bay.
What's your name, sorry?
Charlotte. It was
Charlotte.
Linda emailed yesterday or the day before and got a response.
We're just going to sort this out.
Okay.
Staff might be
It's a
busy.
deputation. We're coming up to deputations now. Okay.
Will that be in the public forum too?
Okay, that's right. Thank you.
Yeah. Somebody's glass.
Oh, it could be one of the ladies.
Yes.
Thank you. I just stand,
Good spotting.
I'm just about as tall as this table anyway. It doesn't make much difference when I stand.
We can see.
Standards. So Morena, thank you for, I'm trying to keep my time right. So, thank you very much for letting me come and talk to you today. This is Cass Bay. Cass Bay Residents Association is a very active organisation which has been in existence since the 1970s and includes members from Corset Bay. Our residents enjoy participating in everything from working on our reserves to the 4 popular events that we organise each year. I send out regular newsletters and emails regarding important information to 170 households, and we have an active Facebook page. This helps to give people a sense of belonging and community, which is an important part of our approach to setting up an emergency community hub. However, not having a community facility to meet in for this and a wide range of other activities inhibits our ability to provide these opportunities. The residents have a long involvement with the armament depot since the Second World War, shown in Robert Allen's signed letter, which I sent a copy to you all. As well as film evenings and barn dances over this period, a very successful playgroup and toy library used the garage for most of the 1990s.
After amalgamation between the Banks Peninsula District Council and the Christchurch City Council, the gates were locked and locals no longer had access to the buildings and reserve, except occasionally when we used the premises because the Navy cadets allowed us access. They had full access during this time. This was despite repeated requests from the Cass Bay Residents Association. It was not a reflection that they didn't want to be involved, and it was only when the Cass Bay Reserves Committee were able to move the situation forward and we got the landscape plan drawn up that situation changed. The reserve has proved very popular since it was opened to the public in January this year and is used daily for recreation, as well as several organisations and locals being actively involved in activities to regenerate tree cover and bring back biodiversity. We've now planted 8,000 trees since 2020 as part of the Whakaora Healthy Harbour project. But when these people are on site, there's nowhere for them to go for just a cup of tea or to shelter if the weather becomes inclement, because we don't have access to any buildings. Building a more expensive building on a less suitable site makes no sense for the Residents Association. Everyone agrees that the garage site is the best one for the community's needs, being the most accessible for our older residents and flatter for preschoolers play. At the AGM in a recent survey, demolition of the garage was universally preferred by local residents. Our argument for demolition are that the conservation report says it is only of moderate significance and lower authenticity than other buildings on the site, due to it being relocated from another army depot and conversion for other uses by adding a front to the 3-bay carport. This is on page 122 in the report. It was reportedly in very poor condition due to lack of maintenance when it was hastily moved overnight to the army depot in 1956. So it was in poor condition then. The conservation report describes it as in poor condition, barely functioning properly with structural integrity being affected. All the building reports echo this, with even the framing described as having issues. From our first inquiries with builders, renovation was not recommended due to being uneconomic. All 3 quotes for rebuilding new that we have obtained are substantially lower than those obtained by the staff, which further reinforces this view. Any new building on site will require a CCC district plan change. Therefore, it would be better for us to move forward on the basis of existing use right over the footprint of the present garage, and is also less likely to trigger Mano Whenua Ngāti Wheki concerns regarding cultural significance, listed as silent file in the consenting report. Sorry. I'm not sure why that's not moving forward. Not sure why that's not happening. Building where the garage would be less obtrusive, given that staff have expressed concern about visual clutter on other proposed sites. Our concept building has been specifically designed to fit in with the historical nature of the existing buildings, and but every measure to reduce its carbon footprint have been taken. We have surveyed 6 different sites for staff, none of which have provided us with any certainty. We've often been asked to make decisions or provide information with very little notice, and then waited for quite a long time to get further information. On the 7th of March this year, at a meeting with Paul Devlin, and Andrew Wilder was also in attendance, I was delighted to hear staff had decided on demolition or relocation, which the Parks Department would cover the cost of. This was later withdrawn due to an exceptionally high quote of over $600,000. The cadets also at a meeting offered to replicate the garage design above the drill hall for their vehicles, but this was turned down too by staff. We have considered building in front of, so these are all our lovely designs. We have considered building in front of the garage if it is to remain, which would also be accessible, a level site and suit our design, though with more limited parking spaces. This is marked as F on the updated site plan that I sent you last night. However, staff are not in favour of this as it would obscure sight of the garage. We were surprised to read in the report that the garage might be considered for storage for the cadets, as we'd not heard of this before. Cost of renovation by CCC needs to be considered in comparison to that of other buildings of greater historic value on site, like the guardhouse. Is this the best use of ratepayers' money? Though possible, Site D would be less accessible and require another design change. Other sites we have considered to be unsuitable, mainly due to access and extra cost. We cannot accept a lease on a vague site due to having had so many impacts. We accept that the staff cannot recommend demolition due to the council policy, but there is always the opportunity for a particular building to be exempted from this, especially as the buildings at Steadfast are not listed as historic, even in the recent council review. So far, we have had pro bono professional services for legal, which was included the MOU, surveying and architectural designs to the value in excess of $15,000. Hence, we want certainty over a building site before we can proceed any further. Oh, great. Consequently, we ask you, the Banks Peninsula Community Board, to endorse our request to demolish the garage in order for us to build a much needed community facility. And regarding the lease for the cadets, at the moment, we oppose the granting of the lease until there is more certainty about a building site for the community facility and local concerns are addressed. It was agreed at a meeting of all parties on the 12th of August last year that the leases of both organisations would be negotiated in tandem it goes against the spirit of our MOU, which is based on reciprocity, if one party is granted a lease ahead of the others. Though a lease for the cadets was considered to agree to the cadets being granted a lease while the Residents Association have no certainty would potentially limit our options going forward. For instance, if no site can be agreed for residents, the options to share the drill hall may have to be considered, though this is not favoured by either organisation. And residents have expressed concerns in the past about noisy activities, and they've not been consulted on the effect of the increased level of the use of camps. So we fully appreciate that the cadets are keen to be granted a lease, as we are. We ask this board considers the needs of your constituents and only proceed when our community has certainty of a resolution for a much needed facility. Thank you so much for this.
Thank you, Jenny, and thank you for putting that in very quickly for us there. Appreciate it.
The edited version.
Short on time, but was it here what you had to say? Thank you.
I'm very important question. It can be answered very quickly.
Yes.
Does it have New Zealand heritage protection? Heritage protection. Staff? Okay, thank you.
I've got a question. Is the community view that no site is suitable unless it's the site that you've described in this deputation?
We have looked at a variety of sites, and definitely our preferred option is the garage, but we would also consider in front of the garage. But we do need a very definite site rather than a vague maybe in this area. Because although I understand from talking to Paul that would be preferable, just we've looked at so many sites and they've been knocked back. We don't feel like as vague to more definite site.
So just quick, through you, Madam Chair.
Yes.
So I'll leave it to staff to decide what the definition of definite site is through their presentation. So I'm still not quite clear though. Like, so is the proposed site in the agenda? Is that you're ruling that site out unilaterally?
I think that there might. I did put out an updated. Felix sent me an updated map last week, which actually was slightly different to the one that's in the agenda. And so the one in the agenda definitely one that is one of the three. Don't disagree has problems.
And we're talking about that.
Yeah, so staff, yeah, so my understanding is staff are going to table that slightly new site that's closer to the old garage site. So could I just ask you, because you're already aware of that document, even though no one else really has seen it yet, is the association in favour of that amended site D that has yet to be tabled? Is that a potential site?
It would be preferably not, but it would be possible for us to do that.
So we'll have a second choice.
No,
Third choice. So the first choice would be the garage site, and the second choice is in front of the garage, and the third choice would be the site D that's to be tabled.
definitely, it's definitely not one of our preferred site, but it's the only other one possible.
And our staff, are they able to specify for the board later why that site is not so preferred by you? But very specific reasons.
I'm not sure. I think so. I'm Felix about it. I think Felix, do you feel aware of how? Sorry.
Sorry, yeah, we're just trying to keep it within questions. The cross boards.
So I haven't talked to all of the staff on that matter.
Yeah.
I just wanted to know the most.
Yes,
I
yes.
haven't talked to Felix.
I have another question if I may for you,
Yes.
Madam Chair, please, and for Jenny. So your criteria for assessing the correct site though are mainly, there may be others, but cost and accessibility. They are the primary
Primarily
drivers.
accessibility. We have to look at our most needy community members who are older people and potentially are younger people or people with mobility issues. Like testing, when I had my tibia the other day and was around the site on practice. I'm under my brace, yes. So I think any community needs to look after its most vulnerable members. And so that's our major criteria. And then obviously we have to raise more money for this project. So for us to justify choosing a more expensive option, it's more difficult, as well as just the whole.
That's good. That gives us information going into this afternoon. Did you have a question?
No, I just wanted to support the work Jenny's done for the community for many years, and it's always for the community. Yeah.
Right. Thank you, Jenny. Appreciate that. We've taken up to move forward now. Yep. We've got, yeah. They'll whisper in my ear when it's time.
Sorry.
I have no idea what's going on, but other people do, so it's fine.
Just tell me to shut up, Madam Chair, so I'm like, this is your.
But we will get there.
Yeah, shut up.
Okay, so next we have Chris Lee, who's coming to talk about, on behalf of Casper Navy Cadets Incorporated. Thank you very much, Chris.
Thank you.
Hello everyone. I'm Chris Nee. I'm chairman for Training Ship Godly Navy Cadets. I'm chairman for Casper Navy Cadets Incorporated. And I'm the South Island Vice President for the Sea Cadet Association of New Zealand. So that all ties in. I've been associated with cadets and Casper for over 40 years. Nice to meet the new community board member. Members. A big thank you to the council staff for working hard trying to finalise our lease at Steadfast Casper. There are a huge number of considerations that have to be gone through now compared to when I first started trying to apply for a lease over 20 years ago with the then Banks Peninsula District Council. Way back then, we were only being offered a year-by-year lease, which gave us no longevity for us still being able to use this site in 20 years' time. Unlike today's lease, which is going to give us a 35-year lease with the option of a rollover clause, which for me is, yeah, we can do a lot more with a 35-year lease than we could with a 1-year lease. Some background, which most of you know, Navy cadets have used the buildings and facilities at Casper since 1965. Over the years, at times we have spent a lot of money keeping the buildings in reasonable repair, painting, replacing guttering, digging out drains around the buildings, and that's mainly to keep the water and sediment out of the buildings, mowing the lawns and generally keeping the land tidy to at least looking like someone cares. In years gone by, parents were more than willing to help with any repairs and maintenance that was needed. Unfortunately, over the last few years, parents are no longer willing to give as much help, especially since our earthquakes and more recently lockdowns with COVID. We are relying more and more on our officers to maintain our buildings, which is really unfair. With this in mind, we cannot apply for funding to keep up with the maintenance until we have a signed lease. We are doing our own fundraising with the tried and true sausage sizzles, selling chocolates, chocolate bars, etc. But unfortunately, this just doesn't bring in enough money to cover the $1.4 million we have been quoted to bring the buildings up to code and to build a new accommodation. As an aside, a number of years ago, I went through the old Canterbury Navy League minutes where they were applying for a lease on the said site for cadets. I found the minutes saying they were applying for a lease and the minutes that said we were using Casper for cadets, but not the actual minutes stating that a lease had been granted or the lease itself. Yeah, this was probably, I don't know how many years ago, probably around that 20 years ago and these minutes are at the library at the university, the reference library at the Canterbury University. So yes, I have been very involved in trying to get a substantial lease so we can make it ours. I mean, even, yeah, because we've been using the building since 1965, we still don't feel that it's our site or our buildings. I'm disappointed that the Casper residents are still, or Jenny is still very much against us getting a lease until a decision has been made for the residents as well. I had hoped that we would have been able to have got a lease for the part of the buildings and the part of the land that we are using. knowing that the residents are only interested in having the old garage and that first part of Steadfast, which we've already agreed on. I'm formally asking the community board to sign the said lease between Caspay Navy Cadets Incorporated and Christchurch City Council on behalf of the council. I have put down here, perhaps the council could give an interest-free loan for us to help us with this $1.4 million we've got to come up with. Are there any questions? I'm sure you've got lots.
So, in your own words,
Yes.
what is your
Irony of that question.
Sorry.
I just wondered, could you give me an update?
in your own words, what's your understanding of the intention of the Banks Peninsula District Council when it decided to purchase the area at Steadfast in terms of what it wanted for the sea cadets?
We were, before the land went into the land bank, the Steadfast site was offered to the first farming families in the area, which one of our old cadet officers was part of that family. That particular officer came to me and said, we were the part of the farming first families, and we could give you this land, but we're not going to. We're going to put it back into the land bank. I said, fine, not a problem. I wasn't going to argue with the man. After that, the Ngāi Tahu were offered the land. They decided that the land wasn't a big enough or useful enough portion of land to be used by them. So they put it back into the land bank and swapped it for another piece of land that was suitable for them.
I guess I'm just sort of referring to sort of 1999 and afterwards. Is this?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all.
Yeah.
In that space.
That's
Okay, cool.
in that-
Thank you.
In that time,
That's
yes.
clarifying.
And 2 weeks after Ngāi Tahu had said they didn't want the land, one of their Ngāi Tahu board members came to me. He was the secretary of Navy League, who I was a member of Navy League at the time. Came to me and said, oh, Chris, I'm really sorry. I didn't realise that sea cadets used, and now they're called Navy cadets. That's why there's the confusion with the two names. We didn't realise that you guys used Caspay like you do. We could have given you that block of land for you to use. Another missed opportunity. And that's why we're in the situation that we're in now. Although we have been there since 1965, we just haven't had any tenure, permanent tenure of the land or buildings. And yes, the buildings weren't flash when we took them over in 65, when we started using them in 1965. And they are very expensive buildings to keep maintained. And yeah, as you could see by some of the photos that Jenny had up there, yeah, they do need a lot of work.
Oh, TLC.
There was no claim put in after the earthquakes where the wardroom, the foundations, it's split, the foundations were split, and the front piece, Tyrone, you'll notice when you're in the meetings, the wardroom, the front where we have our meetings, that is sloping down, and that was from the earthquakes. And there's been no repairs. from the earthquakes on that
There's a
building.
lot of sketchiness to those buildings, to be fair.
And so, yes, we'd love to have Steadfast as our home for camps, accommodation. It's not just our unit that uses the land and buildings. We have the air cadets, the army cadets also use it. The army themselves, both the regular force engineers use the buildings and the surrounding area. And you would have seen 2 weekends ago that the army territorials were in Cass Bay. So they stayed on the site and used the bay itself for some of their exercises. So it's not just us that use the site, although we would be the principal, should I say owner?
Like, before we wrap up, and we need to wrap up quite soon, sorry, we've got a couple of questions. Nigel first.
Well, we've been pretty answered. Yeah, just quickly. So it's getting a lot of use by obviously the cadets and the territorials. What then is left for the community if they were to have a shared space?
The
With
residents
time-wise.
were,
Sorry, I mean, if it was a shared space arrangement, I think I'm a member of Akara Bowling Club, and this bowling club is the council asset,
yes,
but it's open at any time anyone wants it. But then that depends on frequency of use,
yes.
capacity as well. Would there be an issue with a new shared building?
It would, I think it would be difficult for the residents.
Yeah.
With the drill hall. The drill hall is a very big, open, drafty
Okay.
building. I don't have, I'm not saying no. They have had their play group many years ago, 20 odd years ago, they had a play group there. And then once they started off many years ago in the drill hall.
I think the residents need their own space. Be better off for the community.
Thank you.
More access.
Does that answer?
Yeah, real
Yeah,
quick,
that's fine.
real quick question from me. So in terms of use of the site for the Sea Cadets, are there any planned uses that the site has not been used for since 1965 that the Sea Cadets are planning on using it for in terms of frequency?
Is the land itself?
The areas that Sea Cadets would utilize.
We do intend to build a new accommodation block.
Yeah, but like, I mean, I guess like you've mentioned the army come and that sort of stuff, like that's standard stuff that's been happening forever, I think,
Yes,
as I understand it.
yes.
Are there, would there be an increase in frequency or type of use of the site, apart from what has been done since 1965?
Okay, I had originally thought once the buildings were up to code, we could invite lower decile schools to use it as camps, but that may be too much use on the area. It certainly gets a lot of use from the groups, the Navy, Air Force and Army, either regular force or cadet forces that use it now. It is used a lot.
But no commercial use, is it?
No, no.
Howard, you got a question?
Yeah, this is just down at the ballpark. I assume you're getting government funding for.
No,
Oh, okay.
no.
No.
We get no funding at all.
Okay. So where's the funding come from? You're raising it's from charitable organisations.
Yes.
So yeah, public. Okay, public. What I'm thinking of is, has it been considered to bring the whole site up to standard, including the garage that the residents want, and then split it off and combine your funding efforts as one unit, because you are obviously better at raising funding than the community is. But then the community's got access to the council for fundings. Hey, look, I'm guessing here. So yeah,
Take it back a step. I did apply for shovel-ready money, beginning of COVID. When we applied, our dollar value was 900,000. We applied to shovel ready with that, and they came back to us saying, sorry, all the small money has been used, and now you need a project well over $1 million.
So you need to build fresh buildings.
So I went back to other cadet units around the South Island, Ashburton, Rangiora, Timaru, Dunedin, Nelson, to see, hey, if they want more money, we will put a combined. So we did, and again, it was pro bono people that we know went out to all these sites. The build came in at $14 million. By the time we got that in, they said, sorry, shovel ready's closed. So every time I'm almost there getting stuff done, the gate comes down.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is,
So
if you
yes,
combine with the
that
Residents
would have been-
Association, that would probably solve their, I don't know, would they be more open to moving forward with you if they knew their project was actually going to get some attention rather than just stuck on the back
Something
burner?
to keep in mind, definitely, but unfortunately we're running out of time for now. So Chris,
Yeah.
thank you very much for your time.
Any other?
That's the time
Thank
we have
you.
for today. Thank you.
Yeah, good thoughts.
Yes, appreciate your time. All right, now we are coming round to Charlotte Wedding, is it?
Yes.
Come on
thank
up,
you.
your turn. Thank you for your
I'll be
patience.
really fast.
Okay, thank you.
I'm Charlotte. I'm from Cass Bay, lovely Cass Bay. We border on to Steadfast, and I've got major objections with the Steadfast facilities being used beyond what they're currently being used. Absolutely, I've got kids, love the noise of kids and everything, but don't want to be sitting on a Saturday night having sort of loud parties because things are being used beyond what they're actually and what we understand they're being used for. So how they're currently being used at the moment for sea cadets, noise during, the 5 or 6 times a year that it's being used, absolutely fine, no complaints whatsoever. But if those facilities are then going to be an accommodation block rented to, out to people for commercial gain, that's to me is not okay, because we pay massive rates to live where we do, and it's a rural setting, and I know that all of the people on our driveway would majorly object to that. So
Thank you. Yeah,
that's
noted,
short and sweet.
definitely noted your objection there.
Yeah.
So when we go into discussions.
Perfect, thank you.
Thanks.
Charlotte.
I'm going to sneak off, so thank you, and hope you have a successful day.
Look, Duggan. Hello.
Charlotte speaking.
So we've wrapped all of that up there. So we've decided to move 10 and 11 forward. See that is all together within this, what we're discussing now. So if you change over and have a look. So if we could ask our presenter and staff to come up and talk about that. So that's Felix Dorfman, Kelly Hanson, to talk about and Maria as well. Yes. Paul. Sorry. Hi, Paul. Come on and get the whole party started.
You're comfortable.
I'm going to put Paul in the middle, Paul.
Hot seat.
Maybe shorts on today.
Well, as you can hear, there's a huge amount of public interest in the place, for community interest, first and foremost. So it was wonderful actually earlier in the year to get across the line finally with kind of opening the gates on a site that was appeared by all purposes to be pretty restricted, to the level of having a no trespassing sign on the gate and all sorts of stuff. So we are open, but yeah, look, you can hear how really the site is going to become one of my more challenging parks to manage, to be honest, given the amount of interest in it and varying interests in it. And we've inherited some pretty dodgy buildings, as we all know. I've got rockfall risks up the top, terrible access in general in terms of cars and people, with lots of obscured sight lines and all sorts of stuff. But strongly passionate community residents association, the cadets and a reserve committee. And as you've heard today, not always completely aligned, but pleasingly for me is that when we're in meetings and we're actually doing the mahi on the site, is that they all work incredibly well together. And then of course there's the issue of, if you looked at it really objectively or dispassionately, I suppose, is that it's not an ideal site for a community building because of those access issues. And certainly when we put it in front of the community facilities people, it was a struggle to suggest that there was a need for that, given the access the community has to other sites perhaps. But that doesn't at all diminish that we desperately do want to try and do something for the Residents Association. We accept that the site is on their backyard, they're so closely connected to it that we want to try and make something work. Unfortunately, I think what that leads to is a lot of compromises, given the heritage values of the sites, the limited parking, limited access, and a bunch of other things. And as we've just heard now, perhaps some concern from local residents about how that might change the use of the site. So we're trying to work out a way of delivering you something that doesn't mean that you have to go against council policy for decision making, and which demolition has been suggested would be against council policy, and putting decision making back to full council rather than a local decision making ability. So that's sort of the basis around the report that you'll be seeing today. In terms of where we've got to as staff for a recommendation that you guys can support, that we can work with our community to make it real, because they have put in considerable effort, which we completely respect that, and try and make this as much as we can to everybody who has desires on this site. So it is a challenge and it is compromise. So out of all that has come the report that I hope you've had a look at, in terms of the first report anyway, on the community board, the Residents Association desire for a community facility, which comes down to us suggesting an area that is not ideal, but can be likely consented. I've had a long conversation with Kent Wilson and the planning team to try and work out what the easiest path is to gain consent for this. And that does land a building somewhere in that area that we've marked on maps, which I'm not sure if we'll show or not. Oh yeah, sorry. I thought it was all going on behind me and you were nodding.
Just nodding at you, Paul.
Just to clarify for everybody looking through, it's item 11, so I need to find it on a new one.
We're probably doing both reports at the same time, I think, in this discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah, if that's all right. Yeah.
Oh, 10 and 11. Fabulous.
So we're flipping, we're
Flipping in
essentially
between item 10 and item 11. And so
It's the same
something now.
They run together. It was just to put them in one report would have just been too long-winded in terms of the recommendations.
So, you know, to really cut to the chase on it, we don't believe that we can present you an option of demolition of the building without completely going against council policy, which, you know, that wouldn't get signed off for us to even present to you. So that's where we believe we are. And we have the heritage report done, and out of that has fallen enough value in this site that we need to be very cautious about how we impact particularly the military heritage that this site is presenting to the community. And it is a huge positive for the site. This is going to be quite a unique site. And when it does come time to gazetting this reserve in some form, because at the moment it's not gazetted as park at all, we need to make sure we do give a nod to that heritage value. So it'd be a little bit ironic for us to be demolishing things for that reason as well. And yeah, look, my heart goes out to Kathy, and I know that her daughter in particular has put huge mahi into planning and those sorts of things, and we've dragged people up and down that hill. Jenny, what did I say? I'm so sorry. Sorry, Jenny. We've literally dragged Jenny up and down that hill when she was in a moon boot to try and work out some compromises, to work out where we can put a site that has got the least path of resistance from a consenting and a council decision-making process. And I know it isn't absolute perfectly, doesn't fit perfectly, but nothing on this site will. And that's a real issue that we've got. So we do think that from a constructability point of view and a consenting point of view, that somewhere in this area and here is the ability to have a facility. And the latest iteration of that, we've had blogs all over this one on that, would be to put something in here as opposed to demolishing, putting a building behind, or putting a building in front.
The handles are up further.
Well, oh, sorry, yes, yeah, sorry, yeah, and this is the other option. The proposed cadets building would be up in here, which isn't shown on this map at this stage. So these sites here were deemed, for all the reasons in the report, as being less desirable than coming up with an option in here. And we haven't written it in blood yet because we do know there's a fair bit of work that we need to work with the Residents Association. I think we can probably work with them better in terms of expecting them to come up with all the answers. But somewhere in here, we do think that we could, subject to consultation, that this community board could approve in principle an area in here to grant a lease so that there is some certainty for the Residents Association to move ahead. So long and short of it is that's where we've got to with the report you're seeing in front of you. The other joint issues are these buildings here, which the cadets wish to formalise an agreement on. Does it include that?
No.
Just doesn't.
The toilet
block is the cadets' own building, sitting on council land. So that needs to be formalised in terms of a lease agreement. And then the occupation use of these two buildings here also needs to be finalised to give them some certainty to move ahead, because they would be looking at putting significant money into the upgrade of the buildings. And the second one would be, again, subject to consultation, agreement to grant a footprint in this area here for the new accommodation.
So what will happen to the current building if you build, no, the one down in red?
This?
Yeah, that's the garage that they're talking about putting Residents Association in. So say they build on a brand new one on site D.
Yeah.
What happens to that other building? Is it, who's going to repair that? Who's going to restore it? What are you going to do with it?
Yeah, so we know we need to put some dollars in to make that safe. Whether we can ever get to a stage that would have occupation is probably unlikely, but we could certainly use it for storage or other types of use. So there is some budget available to try and get that building into a better standard so that it's not a risk. It's got broken windows and all sorts of other real problems with it. But we will, and there's also an LTP coming up, which I put in a bid for funding for the whole site, because it's not just these buildings you see, there's a whole pile of other buildings tucked away all the way up the valley. Was there 12? 13? 10 bunkers, all of which, you know, I'd like to tidy up one of them, but even tidying up one of them and getting rid of all the asbestos is probably $1 million. So we'll come to you at some stage asking for that money.
Asbestos is good.
Well, China, the way it is, I think do it up.
So the site as what I'm saying, the site as a whole is really complicated. You know, further up, I've got the whole true left of this valley kind of red zone for rockfall risk. We've got tracks to build, all sorts of things, but I really feel for both the Residents Association and the cadets that they've been in limbo for a bloody long time. It really has been frustrating for everybody. we are trying to dance on the head of a pin to get them something which is consentable, usable, and now we need to get through the consultation process and try and bring the community with us for them to not be terrified of some great change in use here and see it for what it is, which is a much valued, much loved community asset. That we want to have a gate wide open that people can go in there and use the site for both community building type uses, for sea cadets, and for the public to be able to explore and walk all the way up to the Summit Road.
But the public wouldn't be able to use it when the sea cadets are using it, would they?
Yep, we've got systems in place now with signage and a gate up here, which when people walk up this side here, they'll come down. If there's a million cadets running around in here, there's a gate across here and they walk across the bridge and come back down. So no, it is open, it'll be open 24/7 for the public. We're going to have security issues, we're going to have other things to deal with.
Smart bulbs.
Life of a park ranger, yay. And parking and access issues with getting people onto the site.
Well, just on that, I've already talked to.
Sorry, it's just for the
sorry.
staff to report back to the board at this stage.
I've already talked to the road dimensions. That's all I was going to.
Yeah, so yeah, there is lots of things that we can do here, and we're still plugging away at those. So yeah, look, as I said, the guts of this is to really try and get us advancing down a positive path, working with the Residents Association to try and develop something here. We know that it won't necessarily be the preferred option, but the whole site is a compromised site of preferred options. But I'm pretty confident we can work with them.
So does the board have any other questions for the staff? Now's the time to ask.
Does this have Heritage New Zealand petition?
No, not that I can gather.
Not that gazetted either. I'm surprised by the whole thing.
Yeah.
The site isn't listed with
Not listed.
Heritage New Zealand, and it's not scheduled on the district plan. However, and it's also not in Plan Change 13 that's going through hearings at the moment. However, it is on the Heritage Team's list to investigate further for listing or for scheduling in the district plan.
Thank you.
Obviously, what I gather, the Residents Association haven't had an opportunity to discuss this submission.
Well, we've had loads of on-site meetings and phone calls and things, and yeah.
Is it a good time to table this? Was this sent to you guys prior to the meeting?
That's this, isn't it?
It's in the 500-page report.
No, it's not. So when the report was drafted and put through the process, which is 6 weeks ago, the suggestion was that the site would be here, further up the hill here. D would be there. Well, in between then and now, we've had a number of conversations with residents, and they've said that they prefer this lower site because of the access primarily. And both sites have had levels done. So it's not like we haven't had conversations about the potential for this. We've also reviewed it as far as the planning is concerned. So it's not sort of come out of nowhere. It's just that we have slipped these reports for a number of times, as you may be aware. We really felt that we needed to get this to you guys and get a decision, particularly for the sea cadets. So what we're saying here is that we've looked at so many options. We've narrowed it down to this area. We thought that the higher site was preferable. We understand where the residents are coming from. That lower down is probably better for them, better options for access. So we're saying if you can give us authority to negotiate the fine detail of the actual location, they'll need to come up with the design for that. And then we will inform you of the the results of the conversations before we consult. So both any new build will need a consultation. So that includes residents and the proposed dormitory.
So if,
You following that?
Sorry,
Yeah,
can I
yeah.
just-
I think what we need today is permission to look at or to consult. What we're wanting is to look at this whole area, the details of exactly where it is within the area. We can still discuss with the Residents Association, confirm that with them before we go out for consultation.
Absolutely.
We don't need to pin down the exact site today. We're just saying somewhere in that area.
yeah, as
Well, we feel, yeah, we understand where Jenny's coming from. She wants certainty. But, you know, what we want to do is just get the authority to go and establish that certainty within a
yeah,
a specific area.
I support the sea cadets always have, because anything that gets kids down a play station has to be benefit. If the lease was granted, would the residents area move forward quicker or slower?
I don't see there being any issue with granting a consent, a license lease for the sea cadets in terms of being a negative impact on the residents associations.
Just they talked against it.
Yeah,
That's what concerns me. We're
I
going against what the residents
I understand that. I think there has been some fear there that it would compromise it, but look, there is an MOU that's in place with the cadets and the Residents Association. I think that has been signed. But we're hand in glove at reserve committee levels and all sorts of other levels. So honestly, these guys work pretty well together. And we would ensure in terms of staff that we play a strong role or a bit of a nurturing. We can be, stamp our fists and feet or whatever as well. But I don't see that being an issue in terms of granting the existing, because it's existing use for the cadets. They need their certainty to move ahead. And we want to be able to action both things. I don't see it compromising each other.
I think you've got to look at it like this. Is there any real likelihood of going back to square one and talking about shared use? Nigel, you raised the possibility of shared use. We've looked at it in quite a lot of detail, and the feasibility of shared uses of these two old buildings has come down to very low.
Okay, but going forward, I mean, I heard the territorials come, the ACPMP come in crisis. I know there's quite a few people, and they stay up a bit late at night too sometimes,
Right.
So for the noise and the volume of people in there at any given time, would there be some sort of control around some of the users for the lease?
Well, in terms of the lease and the permitted use, we have always said that it should be at the same level, current level as it's always been. And that if it was wanted to be, if it was scaling up, then it would be breaching that, and then you'd have to revisit it in terms of the community.
There'll be all sorts of requirements we can put in a lease agreement and a use of the grounds agreement, because this is only for the buildings. So behaviours on the grounds surrounding it all, I can rule with an iron rod in some ways in terms of how that's managed to make sure that the concerns of the locals are really listened well to here. So that's doable.
Can I raise this one question?
With an iron rod, that's good.
Yeah, you like that one, Tyrone?
That's pretty
I say it in the safety of this group.
I mean, that's quite comforting to know, because I know that the community leaders have concerns about that. As long as the mechanisms are there to manage that, then that's good. So in terms of the proposed site, Deb, in your professional opinion, would that be a more or less or just the same in terms of difficulty to access a building on that site as it would be if the community facility was on the location of the garage?
From as in truly accessible terminology, accessibility.
Yeah. For
well,
mobility impaired people, for the elderly.
No. So it would be easier if it was on the flat. I don't disagree with that at all.
Yep.
But that's not to say that we can't overcome that with engineering and design. So there is the ability to have a graduated path 1 and 12, whatever the standards require there. Plus also the benefit is that we're not taking up potential parking space for people who need that level of access. that would be a concern for me if it was in front of the garage, for instance.
The other thing to note too is the building proposed by the community. This also has a ramp in that too, so it will require accessibility no matter where it is, and it will have to be at the correct gradients to allow accessibility for people with all disabilities.
And then in terms of parking on the site, it kind of almost doesn't really matter. I mean, parking's compromised anyway, so it doesn't really matter, like my view would be. So I'm just interested in what your take would be, how the parking would interrelate with any proposed.
It's really, as you know, it's a dog's breakfast in there, particularly if it's damp. So it is a challenging site. That's what I'm saying. The site's already compromised from before you even open up the gate as to where you can manage all the things you'd normally associate with community facilities and buildings. So as Jenny alluded to, we have had discussions with the roading team to create some better sight lines in there. We're going to have to work pretty hard at making sure that that does work. And even the planner said that the rules around parking will have to be met with the consent for this as well. So there are some challenges there, but we think they are all feasibly worked through.
Yep. And that's all right, it's important. And what was I going to say? Oh yeah, sorry. So the recommendation for item 11, does that unilaterally rule out the possibility of a community facility on the site of the garage?
Yes, that would be giving approval to consult on, once we put it down, something in this area.
Because the way I'm reading it is it says item 3 in the recommendation to approve final location of site D described above or nearby in consideration of any CBRA feedback and site specific factors. So does that in itself rule out?
That was our intention, to rule that out. We were trying to express that it could be somewhere in that space I've just pointed to.
What we're asking for is to nail down the detail on that site behind the buildings. That's based on the acceptance that the demolishing or repurposing on the garage side is not a preferred option. I mean, we could, if you theoretically you could come back and say, well, we couldn't agree on one. You have to think about it again. But the same issues will be there. That is, it's not an easy path to demolish the building, and we don't recommend it. We don't think it's the best thing for the site.
What if the garage was never able to obtain funding to be restored and just fell into a state of utter disrepair, similar to being dangerous to people, as we've seen with the Rākaihautū.
That's a fair question, I suppose, as to what are our intentions. And I'll kind of look nervously towards Maria on helping me with that, because, do we have the funding there to be able to have that more than just a locked building?
And Felix, correct me if I'm wrong.
So excuse me, Maria, can you speak up quite loud? The microphone's on the ceiling here.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just a wee bit further away.
The intention is to, I think the cadets are currently using it as accommodation. So the intention is to improve it so that accommodation can continue there in the short term until their new accommodation block is built, which could be however long that is. So we have funding there to bring it up to that standard to allow that to continue. From there, once they've got the new block in place, the area, the building can be used possibly as a classroom, activity room for the cadets, or it could be used as a storage place, or it could be repurposed again to its original purpose as a vehicle and storage workshop for the cadet boats. But that may require us, this is right, Felix, to come back to the board and maybe look at in addition to the lease.
Or potentially, sorry,
Yeah.
it could be used for the reserves committee for the tea and coffee that they were talking about. There's a whole pile of other things that maybe we hang on to it as more of a council controlled asset that can be used for whatever is appropriate at any time. We don't want to give away all the good stuff.
But in the short term, there's funding to patch it up and make it safe.
So it's currently being,
Extensive renovations at this stage.
so it's currently being used as accommodation for the sea cadets
Yes.
to sleep in. So it's obviously safe. So therefore, no community building will be looked at until the sea cadets have built a new dormitory.
No, because it doesn't, what we're saying is that if you choose the site in here, that process can get underway. That process can get underway. We can do what we need to do on this.
Yeah.
And it meets everyone's objectives.
But until the new building's built, the sea cadets got to use it for sleeping accommodation.
Yes, at the
Yeah,
moment.
yeah, so,
Yeah,
but if you choose another site, they can start building and start the building
start
process.
start building and planning, start tidying up, start tidying up, get leases sorted out.
To answer the question, will it just be left to go to Rack and Ruin? And would it be like the Mitre? Well, the Mitre is privately owned.
It's a good distinction.
There's been a lot of, these buildings have been left for a long time. I don't think parks can continue to leave them as they have done for the last 20 years. Things have changed. The focus on this park is much higher. The public are using it more. They're just going to have to generate some funds to do what they need to do there.
I think it's a matter of looking at, where are the fail points? And I see a huge red flag in terms of fail points with demolition and all that sort of stuff. If we can progress and work more closely and positively, which I'm not saying that we haven't been, with the Residents Association on options and that area there, then, we may reach a fail point again. But we need to be able to punch ahead quite hard with it by at least saying in principle that, if you do carry on with this, you'll get a lease. That's what they really need for certainty. And it's what I think the cadets really need for certainty. And we just want to facilitate it in the best possible way we can.
Well, the cadets in the short term need some certainty to be able to go out and raise some money to do the repairs. Have you noticed bits are falling off the buildings even more now?
Yeah.
They really need to get on with the repairs. We're not offering to do the repairs, they are. So, but they need the lease for those buildings. Is it creating uncertainty for the residents? A little bit, sort of, theoretically, but are we going to go back to square one and start sharing the drill hall and the water room? Unlikely.
So there's a lot of good faith. Sorry, I've just got some more questions if I may. So if the community board was to reject item 11 and send it back to staff and pursue a pathway of demolition that was to meant that the decision making would be taken away from the community board to the council, where there is no guarantee that it would go through, and go down that route, because council would obviously have to go against its own policy in order to achieve that. Do we have a sense of what the process and the time frame would be in that regard?
Well, for a start, it would need public consultation.
Yeah.
So
okay.
I don't know what the backlog of, for the level of consultation here, it's probably have a say process. That'd be the starting point.
Yeah, and I just worry about our Cass Bay community too. I mean,
Going to go around forever.
it's just another thing again, and you sort of asked Jenny in a roundabout way the feeling of compromise and whether it was livable or not, and I think that is something that we have to just listen to. But I'd be worried about going right back to council again with all this, like to full council.
Yeah.
Well, if the residents want,
I mean, it could be
if the residents want, if we want certainty around this, I don't think that's the path of certainty anytime soon.
One final question.
No, that's what I'm just trying to find out.
One final question. So for the item 10, the lease for the Sea Cadets, item 2, and it post lease for the buildings, initial peppercorn rental to be reviewed in 5 years. Now, it feels to me, and I could be wrong with this, that funding for the Sea Cadets is not necessarily set in stone. There are some avenues, but they are, it's not locked in. Is 5 years, if let's just say funding just doesn't come, just doesn't happen, then we've got a lease basically with a tenant that is unable to move forward on the stated objectives, right? Which is a risk. It's 5 years too long in order to be able to review it.
Well, it depends how much peppercorn is. But yeah, I understand what you're saying.
What we're talking about there is recognition is that they will be raising money to put into our assets. So it's so they get it. It's unfair to then charge them rent for the pleasure of that. That's what that is referring to. A nominal rent to take into account the amount of money they spend, and then we'll continue to review it over time to see what's fair.
I guess it's more about that if the Sea Cadets are not able to upgrade the buildings.
Are you saying if they're unable to raise funding?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you've raised a good point that, I could have or should have put in a specific resolution saying if they're unable to raise funding within 2 years. I think that we could say that for both.
Then we can have a review.
Yeah, there needs to be a ceiling cap on the time, how long they take.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it could be 5 plus.
So we could
raise money.
We could put an amendment to its recommendation just as
We could do.
as a safeguard.
Yeah, I think it's a good point, and I think it's arguably an omission. We will certainly put it in the lease. It is actually in the draft lease, I think.
So we don't need to make an amendment to this recommendation?
Well,
we probably should.
You've got me on that.
I mean, that's your own to take advice.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was just fixing the resolution.
Just on item 10, number 2.1. Oh, sorry, 2.2, sorry, excuse me. Yeah, that begins a gross lease. What we've just been discussing is inserting a fail-safe into the recommendation. That means that if the lessee is struggling for funding, that there's an opportunity to have a bit of a review of that. I'm happy to accept what Felix thinks is a good item.
Well, you could just make. What have you
sorry,
come up with?
page 17.
What was that, sorry?
Well, you could put a resolution in, or I could say it's already in the lease, but I can't. I haven't got the copy of the lease, unfortunately. I'm just looking for it. I thought I had my lease.
But we can at least note it. I mean, raise it in our recommendation.
You could add it to the recommendation. What have you come up with for this?
You first, Tara?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm just asking for what the appropriate way to do that.
Processes.
So-
Just figuring out process.
Yep, so
What about it? Yeah, I've got the lease.
2.2 is about the
Sure, yeah.
peppercorn rental review.
Yeah.
Oh, I guess I mean, however we frame it, within the recommendation, I'm saying, can there be some noting that if there's a review at some point in the not too distant future where we assess whether the funding is going to be funded, review, but the lessee, i.e. Sea Cadets, whether or not they're able to meet their obligations under the lease of raising money to review the buildings.
Lease review in 5 years.
No, that's a rent review. You could, yeah, it's a good point, and I'm for us.
So we could add a new piece, a new recommendation, like don't attach it to the
Right, yeah, sorry, that's my mistake.
Just a new one and say that the leases, the granting of the leases is contingent on the TS Godly raising funds with satisfactory funds. It's funds to the satisfaction of the parks manager within 2 years.
Yeah.
3 years?
2 years isn't long.
Over
$1 million.
Well, what's reason? What does the table think is reasonable?
Well, 3 years, but I mean, it's just to have a pathway, like it doesn't.
You don't have to have raised it, it's just to see that it's.
Is there a feasible?
Yeah, if nothing's happening in 3 years, then we can review it.
But you may want to clear that if they are raising funding during that time, you can't say that they haven't raised enough funding. So you may want to put
The
that.
review's a review.
Doesn't
Yeah, say that's it's gonna happen.
Yeah, exactly.
Review.
Just have a check.
Review to see that there's a pathway for funding.
Yeah, there's a progress.
And what was the amount of years we agreed upon?
3.
3.
Yeah.
Did you catch, anyone catch? Yeah, I just, I'd put it on, number 3.
Put it,
I wouldn't-
number 2.
It's not,
Number 2.
it has to be before 6 and 7.
So is this a note?
Yeah, I put a note in under point 2, resolution 2.
Thanks everybody for your patience reading through this. I think it's worth it, taking the time
Yeah.
to get it right.
Well, it's
Yeah.
taken a while to get here, a
Yes.
few minutes now, but surely.
It's the nitty gritty.
1965, 67, 67.
So are we clear, the 2 elements of this resolution for TS Golly, for instance, we're also, what we're doing here is we want to finalise a location for the residents for a new build. And then we will do a consultation for both new builds, TS Godly.
Sorry, Felix, we're finalising the location for residents.
I was collapsing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just so that you're clear what you're
We're voting
saying.
on.
Yeah.
So what
We have
bit?
covered
There's 2 bits, you said.
Clearing up the lease and TS Godly.
At least for TS Godly for the 2 buildings. And we're, that you're authorising us to enter into a lease.
Yeah.
And we're approving the location of 2 new builds. And then we will consult on those and bring them back to you with the details, with the results of the consultation and presumably a recommendation to enter into 2 new leases in addition to ground leases for their new builds.
That's a lot of words in lots of different ways.
Did
Okay.
you?
Did I not just get it the first time?
Did you not get that? That's why I thought it might be good just to highlight what we're doing.
No, yes, definitely. I wholeheartedly agree. So I did get the first bit, which is finalise the location for the residents. You're talking about clarifying the lease for TS Godly, authorising entry into a room, something.
We've got existing buildings there. We want to give TS Godly a lease so that they can get on and do the repairs.
Yeah.
Both parties need to build additional buildings.
Yes.
And we're asking you to approve the location. And then we will go and consult on the new buildings because it hasn't been put to the community, new buildings. And then we'll come back with the results of that, presumably with a request to recommend ground leases for those 2 new buildings. So prior to that, we need to nail down the exact location of the the residence building within this general area located shown as D. And you'll see from the plan that I've tabled today is that it's more likely to be lower down than where it is on in the plan attached to the report, which you've all very familiar with. Just to show.
It's just explaining the recommendations on the food routes, really.
Well, you guys are working out that.
Okay, sure, the other one. So
Yeah,
when I
so-
say we don't all vote for this, we don't vote for that, but also I'll just explain it briefly. Feel free to.
There is an additional map showing where the sea cadets would like their building to go.
Okay,
Yes, so of the amendment, so an amendment, have we? Okay. So let's read correct for a legal continuation.
Head of Parks. Do we call them head of Parks?
It may not be you, Paul, as we.
So does the word
Not me.
need to go on there?
Review as not in.
That's fine.
That's the other.
Okay.
Looks good to me.
Yep. Yep.
It just means that you've done, that you're progressing.
To the satisfaction of the
It doesn't
council.
mean that you've raised it all, that you've made it, there's evidence that you're.
There is a
that you're doing
pathway,
it.
but long track.
you sent one letter.
Hey, what, as long as it's to the satisfaction of the council, right?
Yeah.
As long as it's more than today.
No, because this is your, this is your board's views.
Okay, so we will be voting.
Okay, can we,
I'm
I'm just wondering if you're aware, have we answered all the questions we know we were at? I've got a clear idea of what we're doing today.
no, I got one more question.
Go, go for it.
With this lease, if he is godly, the wording keeps coming back to pre-existing use. Right, it's been pre-existing use. Now, what I gather, they've been using this for 40 odd years. So at that time, Cass Bay had 3 houses and 1 toilet block. Now it's got a very growing residence and it's going to increase in residency. What I'm concerned is existing use back 40 years ago, they may have started at 2 o'clock in the morning, firing their guns off and working till 12 o'clock at night. And they can say, oh, anything's existing loose. Can we put some restrictions on what sort of use so residents don't get woken up like they said at the weekend
Yeah,
at 7 o'clock in the morning? You know,
I'm
just
comfortable that we could do that either in the lease agreement in terms of wording or for the use of the grounds outside the building. In terms of that. And also there's just the standard district plan rules anyway, of which it's important to note that probably nothing is compliant there anyway, because it's actually got the wrong zoning on it for the type of use it's getting. So
That includes the non-commercial as well.
There won't be.
no, it's not commercial.
There's no, there won't be any authority to be commercial, and we can limit the hours of activities.
just, yeah, it's just, I support it,
have
yeah,
a
hey, I
nuisance
encourage
clause.
the use and night work and all that sort of stuff, but just,
well, it's a
we had the army in there and you already got a fat number of complaints with, I wouldn't like to get woken up on a Saturday morning, at 7 o'clock in the morning by some idiot shooting off guns.
Well,
let's be realistic.
It's not Auckland City, is it?
It wasn't really big complaints, it was just some people not knowing, we did get notice that army were coming into the base, it was all pretty good. So, yeah, it's not like community went out and complained. Completely respect.
Oh, yeah, I support it,
Yeah,
I'm
I just-
100% for it, I just like to see
Need some
some,
controls in the lease.
yeah, it's,
All right.
I think the point about increased use or and the impact on the community has been well made today.
yeah,
It's
just
been
working with
something
the
that's
community in a growing area.
evolving over the last 5 years, I have to say. It's always been. an issue.
Just got one more question here from Ruben.
I'm keen to move,
Yes.
but I'm also asked just on a procedural matter, I'm wondering whether we can move 10 and 11 at the same time and I'll explain why.
Look,
No?
Okay, so we're going to move 10.
Yeah, I'm happy to move 10 and I'm happy to move 11.
We will have, yeah, we'll have a debate after. So, move and second it?
So this is item 10.
Yes.
Sorry, is there a reason we can't do them as a group?
You don't have to.
Lots of questions about each separate one. It just
Monday.
makes it.
Yes, I agree. So we have Ruben is moving and seconder was Nigel. And we can open that up for debate. Yes.
So there's a song that goes, "You can't always get what you want."
You're gonna sing it?
What you need.
I won't sing it, but you can get what you need. And I think in the case of both 10 and 11, in the case of what we have heard from staff, what everybody needs is certainty. And I think both 10 and 11 give that. So they allow it to people to get on with consents, with use, with the target of something tangible that they're actually raising funds for. And while everybody might have different ideas and different opinions on where and when and how, I think what everybody agrees on is that this is an enormous community asset and an enormous opportunity. And the fact that there's more than one group of people wanting to invest time and love and money into the space is often the case across Banks Peninsula, and is something that we should do everything we can to enable. So I think this, in both instances of 10 and 11, which we haven't yet moved, creates a pathway to activate the space and get the gates open so people can actually just get in and get on with it. And I think that's what people have wanted to do for a long time. So that's what I think it's important we support that.
I agree. You're practicing for your maiden speech.
So the Banks Peninsula District Council bought this site in 1999. They didn't do anything within 7 years until amalgamation. So the site sat derelict for a very long time. In the last few years, we've made a significant amount of progress on it. It's been alluded to that the community have access to it after a very, very long time, and council staff have been absolutely instrumental in that. Done fantastic work. The community have also done great work on the whole site, but you know, amazing on right up into the hills there. So I mean, it just goes to show just how much people love the area and love what they're doing there. I think just very recently discussions have been had to connect that site to the top of the summit. So again, that's like in keeping with the whole community vision for the site. I see this very much as a part of that. It's just all building blocks, putting it in place to get the very, very best out of the site. I don't see any reason why we wouldn't support the Sea Cadets in getting a lease for the site. They have been using it since 1965. And we've been waiting for a lease for 20 plus years, and this gives them some certainty there. So I'm really happy to support that. I feel confident that the lease will not increase the use of the site in a way that will decrease the community's well-being. So I'm confident that we have the safeguards in place that's in this resolution is needed.
Yeah, I just want to acknowledge the effort these community organizations are up for. It's not an easy job to raise funds and repair a building at this stage. This is not just a building that they will be repairing, they will be repairing the future generation as they will be using it, and then they will be building that resilience around the community. As Howard says, that the community is growing, what we see around the world. The key to move forward is being grounded and being connected with each other and connected with our neighbors. We have seen that COVID, and I think this is a really good project. Support that.
Support, but just from the community's perspective is kind of seeing that perhaps maybe the cadets are having a little more than them, but wanted certainty of them, having a place for themselves as well. So if we can, provide certainty and that reassurance, and like if we're really hard on this, then we could move forward. Like we can see trustability in this one.
Motion is carried. Thank you very much.
You talk about the reduced amount of chlorine. It's part of that.
Feels like a fish something, but we're still on it. No. Okay, round two. Ding, ding, ding. So number 11.
I actually, before we do, I just think we need to remove that wee bit.
Vicinity of D.
Yeah, leave the vicinity of D. I think take the site, just open discussions about with the community about that whole area. Because they've said that, well, that's their third option. Maybe they want to go, if we say vicinity D, and they come back and say, oh, look, let's do it round the back here. It's actually a better site, and through negotiation to come to that. Well, they can't because we've specified that they have to discuss it with
Feels that
site
that may
D.
have been done already quite a lot, probably 2 or 3 times. And I'm wondering if leaving site D in there actually does give them more certainty.
Well, if the seed sounds site, the more preferred site, I might, yeah.
I wouldn't want to force a certain site on them at this stage. I think we just got to
It's a
basically,
vicinity, it's not a it's actual site from what I understand, it's a vicinity.
well, we can just take out the D then and put a site of a site as shown in the plan.
Well, the whole issue has been that we just keep on returning to the same discussion point, which is the garage site.
It is indeed too definitive, I think it's.
Well, yeah, look, I mean.
Does it lock you into that site and you can't go anywhere else without?
Where else?
Anywhere.
I don't know, I'm not an engineer.
We've been everywhere,
You
man.
know, I just don't want to.
Remember that one?
So is F in the vicinity of D? So my question is F in the vicinity?
No, it needs to
Doesn't say D above.
Yeah, it needs to be, we think, again, just the path of easiest resistance, you know, it would be between that building there and the garage.
Well, you can't say that because we say site D as marked on the plan. So if that site D is, you can only build it in that site that's marked on the plan.
Vicinity of site.
Look, we've tabled this showing that a different D is probably the preferred, well, likely to be the preferred one. It suggests that the vicinity goes from up as high there to as low there as possible.
Yeah, I
That's
mean, I'm
what
gonna
vicinity
have
means
to,
for us,
you know,
on the basis of the table and the plan.
Jenny's left, and I know that I'll have to work pretty hard with Jenny to get this.
I think as a community, really, and as a residents association, I think she keeps getting singled out, which is really.
And I don't want
out
it
of
to,
community.
yeah, so, you know, I'll probably drop in and see Jenny on my way back from there. Yeah, it has, but, you know, again, it's just a matter of getting something that this community can move on with, and anything in that area there, and I go back to the wording, the vicinity of D would be okay. What we are sort of wanting to rule out, rule out of the discussion until we fail on this area would be to rule out that. So in front of, behind, or on.
Okay, so we've got a mover, we need
I'll
to second it
second
and second it, okay, us, and then we can
Sorry.
see if we, no, you're right.
I won't make a song about it.
Won't make a song. Okay, so this is the opportunity for debate if it is felt to be needed.
I honestly believe that this is the best option. And I would encourage people to support the motion because we've heard from staff. We're really trying
Yes.
to get a good outcome here. This gives the community such a country.
Right, so all those in favour?
Aye.
Ruben moved it and us have seconded it. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Been moved. Carried. Carried. Carried.
Item 12, because we're starting.
Okay, it's been suggested we quickly do item 12, so staff can get away, so we'll do that.
We have briefings.
So thank you for everybody's patience.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Feel it, so you stay.
You want to do that?
Hang on, will it?
Okay.
I'm sure they could appreciate some fresh air before going back to the office.
How long do you think you'll be?
2 minutes.
You got a new sign.
Yes, yes. So we've got the devotionals work yard, proposed lease and men's shed.
God, I was going to bring that up.
Presented by Felix.
You were going to bring it
I
up.
was going to bring that up.
Do you want
So
to?
if you, there's lots of paperwork we're following through to on the amendment page, it's page 540 to 542. if you're
No idea
following
about it.
through.
I've got no opinion on it.
I can talk.
It's in the report.
That I've read. I'm so busy reading 100 other pages.
The floor is yours. We're
Well-
really quiet.
Well, the report speaks for itself. They've been there for, you know, they had at least, it's been holding over for a few years, 3 years. To be, apology from me in that I didn't regard it as much priority as others, so fast possibly. But they really need some certainty. Certainty is the word for today, so that they can justify some expense for a air conditioning unit, which I would regard it as a bit of a priority, really, when I realised what they were wanting to do and what they were waiting for. So that's the background, is that they've been a really good organisation within the community. Nigel can speak to that. They work well with the regional parks people who use the site. It seems a good fit. Everything's pretty straightforward really from those, as far as I'm concerned, on that side.
Any brief questions?
I would like to move it.
Well, I'll second.
I'll ask questions. It's a sort of a silly question because I think I know the answer. But it says means sheet, but women are allowed.
Oh, come on. You've got to be kidding.
Can I just speak?
Is this getting too woke?
This is a mental health issue. It's a community issue. These guys, they do signage, they sell, they make bird feeders for the pigeons and tuis that they sell and give the money to the health hub. It is amazing. They need to invest 120 grand to air ducts in there because they're breathing in sawdust, which is a fire hazard for the building, and it's also a health hazard for elderly people.
Right, noted.
Just checking with my amendment.
Which of course doesn't address the question.
Sorry.
Well, it is noted,
learned colleague.
noting that it is important to have spaces for females and males to be in non-gender.
I was member there, but this discussion came up and females are welcome as well. Yeah, there are a few members that are working. Yeah,
I think we're getting too woke.
Just a name, yeah.
Alrighty, so
Too much
we
woke
got
in this government. I'm an idiot.
Nigel and Tyrone have moved and seconded. All those in favour?
Aye.
And any, what's that? Any against? Or the other one? No? My brain has stopped braining. Come on, brain.
Welcome to the club.
It's approved. Thank you.
Thanks. I'd like to talk about the fact that it's meat site.
Meat site.
Thanks, Felix.
Thank you,
Thank
Felix.
you.
Okay, welcome to.
Man, I'm a building on it.
No, the lease on the butcher shop.
Oh, item
Building a
9.
high rise.
It's a non-linear agenda.
Oh, no.
We've got a briefing and welcome to Simon, who's coming to talk to us about community stories. Thank you very much for your patience.
No, that's fine.
Really appreciate it.
Yeah,
Awesome. I like the subject.
great, thank you. Yeah, so hi everyone, thanks for having me. I'm Simon Daisley from Christchurch City Libraries, and I'm with the digital content team. My role is community stories liaison, and I work primarily with our digital heritage repository, Canterbury Stories. So initially, Christchurch City Libraries has been digitising heritage material for the past 20 years. This material was stored in various places. So we had Kete Christchurch, which is part of the Kete New Zealand program. We had the Christchurch City Libraries website, so various material that had been donated over the years stored in there. But as after the earthquakes, we realised we needed a much more secure digital repository place to store material. With the opening of Turanga in 2018, we launched Discovery Wall, which is the interactive screen on the ground floor of Turanga. That was accompanied by a website which allowed people to upload material itself. But we needed a much larger repository, one that could hold thousands and thousands and thousands of images, PDFs, very long videos, audio for oral histories, and so forth. So in 2020, we launched Canterbury Stories, which is our main digital repository. We now have about 68,000 items in there. That's just not only photographs, but PDF. People write histories, put them up as PDFs, audio, oral histories, as I said, and video. So with this launch of this, we became less of a team that was hidden away, just working by ourselves in Smith Street. We became a lot more community focused, realised we had to get out there and engage more with the community. So, because a lot of our material was inherited from older collections, but they didn't reflect Christchurch sort of they only reflected Christchurch as how the initial collectors may have seen the material, rather than the broader Christchurch that we know today. So just after COVID, we received funding from NZLPP for what was called the Community Stories Project. And that was funded for a year and a half for a role where it was awarded initially to Sarah Tester, but she went on leave and I took over for 6 months. The role was to go out and meet with different community groups which had never been represented in our collections before, and work with them to sort of include their heritage in our collections. So that role was quite successful and was made permanent. Initially, Sarah and I were the Community Stories liaisons. She's just moved to a new role of Archives Council just this week. So I'm now the sole person. So a good example of why we're here is to sort of talk, why I'm here, sorry, is to talk about how we can represent more of Banks Peninsula with the community groups that you perhaps work with. We have plenty of material on Banks Peninsula, but not so much that's been sourced directly from community groups themselves, described by communities and how they tell their stories. Obviously, being in the city, it's easier for us to get to community groups there. It's harder for me to sort of go out and visit groups in Akaroa or other parts of Banks Peninsula as it is. I'll quickly just show this quick photo. This is from Akaroa's museum that they gave to us. It's a dog carrying a newspaper from a farmer, McPhail. He's a familiar name. So it's an example of how an item looks in our collection. Another example of raising a hangi, Anuku Marae. So these are all historic material that's come to us through the museum. But again, it's about getting more, history isn't just 100 years ago, it can also be 5 minutes ago. Again, these are just more examples of different groups that have different material.
1880s, yeah.
How it displays. So the people used to bike out to Akaroa on penny farthings from Christchurch.
Ruth did it once in the 1880s.
Yeah.
And with a series of photos.
So it's quite a journey. In my role, I quite often work with groups, as I said, that haven't been traditionally represented. So when I came into the role, I was primarily working with groups of culture and faith. So one particular group I worked with was Astalab, which is the Islamic charity group which does the Eid festivals. So working with Astalab very closely. This is another example of the Sri Lankan Buddhist monastery, working with the community there. And so we don't just have to have description. This is how an item was displayed. Photo, title, description. These are the metadata tags. You click on these tags, they'll take you to everything else that has the same tag. And then sometimes we have a brief note to explain context. As you see here, we don't just have to have descriptions in Latin or Roman scripts. We can also have Sinhala, other scripts. So here we have Sinhala descriptions and then Sinhala in the metadata tags. So so basically, yes, I'm here to sort of tell you, but to put Canterbury Stories to you and see what groups you might suggest would be suitable to work with.
So how do we get the people in contact with you or vice versa?
Normally, because this is a mix of elected officials and public, I normally, they might suggest to, let's say Leonie, and then Leonie can contact me via council email. So, so that's how it's worked in the past.
I congratulate you, and I think it's great that at least part of the council recognise the peninsula as Christchurch, right? Christchurch. I think it's fantastic because heritage is a big part of the tourism growth going forward. I think you're building relationships with the likes of museum advisory group, and for Akara Museum would be a good place. You mentioned Akara, but have you got O'Kane's Bay in your?
Yes, O'Kane's Bay, there is O'Kane's Bay
River,
collection.
the Rail Museum.
Not that one, no.
No, that's a good one, and of course, Littleton and anywhere where there's heritage, I think, and your presence would be greatly welcome. Sure. They've got a huge collection in the Akara Museum of photos as well, so having all of that available and those stories available. And do you think it will evolve into, I guess, for want of a better word, video?
Yes, so we can have we have video footage in here.
Movie footage.
Yep.
Because one of the big items moving forward for the Akara Museum is to redo their story. They have a movie they play. It's worn out. They can't restore it. It was put together by an earlier museum director over 10 years ago. They want that story there, particularly with the link with Pātaka getting government national status. That would be very important going forward. Thank you.
So how do you, some of these photos are obviously, old. 70, 80, 100 years old.
1843.
Well, yeah, 70, 80 years old. So your interpretation of what's happening is you just guess what's happening to you, or
not
like that dog one.
Like dog one.
You've got dog holding the newspaper. I looked and I say, well, the dog's nicking the newspaper and the guy's chasing after his bloody paper. So open to interpretation.
That's the idea, is that quite often in the past, librarians have taken material from communities and described it how
they
the librarian sees it.
Yeah.
And in this case, it's more about we work with the communities to describe it. So as you noted, perhaps with the Sri Lankan Buddhists, they described everything themselves. That wasn't my interpretation of what I was seeing. That description came from Akara Museum, so maybe they can answer that.
Did you see the Catching Shadows exhibition that got on at the moment?
No.
It's fantastic. It's actually got national recognition. The first photo was ever taken in New Zealand was in Akara.
Oh, great.
So Simon, what we can do from here is we will work, the elected members can contact staff if they've got somebody who will be contact with, who will then contact you.
So I'd also like just to notice, obviously, because we're close with Māori, Māori services, we have a separate Māori services team who's in charge of liaising with local iwi. So if it's content reflecting that, then perhaps best to work through them.
Okay.
So that's
Noted. Thank you very much for your time.
Cool. I've also just got postcards from our photo hunt of photos of the Peninsula. So feel free to just pass them around and take them. And then also bookmarks for Discovery Wall and bookmarks for Canterbury Stories. So
I used to collect Akara photos and postcards.
So have a lot, and if anyone else wants to take one, feel free.
It's not original. It's not original.
Thank you for the influx. We'll get into the influx here. Right, this number 11. Oh no, we're going to number 13. We have number 13 on the agenda, and it is Selwyn Avenue proposed mobility park. And we've got Wayne here to talk to us today. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you very much.
Yep, come on up. Very friendly.
Well, it's morning or afternoon now.
You have my one too.
So if you don't know me, I'm Wayne Hennessy. I've only been part of this ward for this year, basically. So don't know you too much, but Edwin Tiong is my colleague, and he's going to be actually taking over Banks Peninsula area as a traffic engineer. I've sort of taken up as the secondment role within the temporary traffic management team at council, so a 2-year role. So Edwin and Andrew Hensley will be sort of working jointly with any traffic operation issues. I'm still got to tidy up a few bits and pieces here and there, Charteris Bay and Cass Bay issues. So you may see me again, but this one here is a fairly straightforward report just for to consider approval for an installation of a more regulation mobility park on Selwyn Ave. Just investigation showed that the current one on the south side was inadequate for mobility users. So we just wanted to provide a more regulated mobility park on the north side. So
that's page 545 for those trying to find
take it as the report has been read, and happy to take any questions.
Sounds good. No brainer.
What do you reckon, Nige? No brainer? It's good enough for me.
544.
Wait till you get to the Giants' house. You just thought he's leaving.
Well, not leaving because there's nothing to do with the role or the people in the area. It's been great. I've been Papanui, Innes, Fennelton, Waimari. I've had a few wards and this has been quite a good one. Just an opportunity arose. So
You mean the beast, eh? The beast one.
Oh, no, mate.
Sorry.
Go and move it, you move it, you're in the area. It's been moved.
Moved to reading, so I was looking down and asked if it's moved and seconded by Nigel and all those in favour.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
See, we're so easy to deal with. Yeah. Everyone says we're difficult, but we're not.
Edwin will not hear that.
Welcome to the
When you
group.
get the job, yes.
Easy, no, you got the easy one.
All right, I think we're brunching. Brunch, everybody. Let's break for lunch. Shall we adjourn the meeting? Adjourn the meeting. Not really the beginning, we're going to number 6, which is presentations of petitions, which there are none, so we can take them up quite quickly. And then move on to number 7, which is reserve committee meeting minutes, and Natasha is going to present those.
Natasha is not here.
She's not here,
So we'll take the report as read.
and we will take a report as read.
I'm happy to move.
Moving to move and second.
I'll
to
second.
Luana, took around here, and yes, all those in favour?
Aye.
And put that forward. Head-to-head walkway working party, appointment of the chairperson.
Nice. Yeah. Given this current.
I know.
I'm happy to move.
Yeah. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? No, I'm against it. No, I'm just joking. Thank you for that. Congratulations.
Very diplomatically timed.
You've been appointed as the chairperson without your knowledge.
In my acceptance speech, I'd like to thank the residents of Whakanapo, Littleton Harbour, and all the communities around it.
So next after that, we've got, we've done stories, fantastic, moving forward. 13, Selwyn Avenue proposed by 14. Didn't think we were doing that one, we've done that one. Number 14 on our agenda, which is the Community Board Strengthening Communities Fund for 2003 and 2023, 2024. So we've got Philippa and Andrea and Jane and Tricia talking to us about that today. Is that right?
My mask is an abundance of caution. On Friday I was unwell. But this is to stop you guys from getting anything. I've been well for 2 days.
Thank you for your abundance of caution.
Do speak up extra loud.
Yes. My colleagues are here for
Moral support.
but
They don't
because
believe
there's
you,
not
so
a
they're
lot of
sitting way over
space
there.
around this table, I'm here on my own. Yes.
Just before you begin, I found this on page 567 of the attached stuff in our agenda. So, no, 545.
All right.
Look at that. So we know what we're talking about.
No, I think on page 53.
Right, we're here to consider applications received for this year's Strengthening Communities Fund project round, project starting 1st of September and allocating funding for these. These applications have been assessed by staff and gone through peer collaboration. A number of projects were transferred from through this process from Strengthening Communities to discretionary response for assessment consideration elsewhere. As other funding was considered more appropriate, funding may have set a precedent or more information was required. The projected spreadsheet lists the applications to be considered today. These have been previously workshopped with you. You will note 5 applications this year have been recommended for multi-year funding. All previous multi-years have completed their terms. So the 5 are Akaroa Resource Collective Trust, Littleton Community House Trust, Project Littleton, Royal New Zealand Plunket Trust, and the Loons Club. Brief notes will be recorded and your preferred allocations will be noted. At the top right of the spreadsheet, the box shows the budget available as approved in the annual plan. That's 199,233. Leftover will be transferred to your DRF, Discretionary Response Fund, where it will be used for your board projects, applications for community groups, and applications to your Youth Development Fund. You will notice also in this box, we've noted the amount you have identified for your board projects, which will be decided later at this meeting.
So board projects, just under the $7,000. The blue box shows the staff recommendation total taken from the blue column. Staff recommendation. And shows the remainder for discretionary response if this were the allocation. Your preferred amounts will be noted in the decision meeting column, the green one. And the running tally will show at the top right corner of the spreadsheet, also in the green. We have already populated this with the staff recommendation amounts for your ease. So both amounts for discretionary response fund are the same until you indicate an increase or decrease in allocation. Brief notes will be put on the spreadsheet and as I said, the remainder will be transferred to discretionary response and will be used for these applications for board projects and for your youth development. This fund is open until it is expended or until the 30th of June 2024. You will note staff recommendations and board projects for this year will leave a reserve of just over 22,000, but this is likely to increase as the carry forward from last year will be added along with any returned grants or any other amounts that may become available. You'll notice that from the workshop and from earlier this morning, the comments section of the spreadsheet has already been populated with those who have shown a conflict of interest. Are there any additional conflicts that need to be recorded? Okay, and you will notice that in the notes, the multi-year applications are also noted in the column notes. And you will also note that under the Akaroa Resource Collective Trust, that there is $3,000 goes towards the Anzac commemorations for Little River and Akaroa. So that allocation indicates that it's sort of ring-fenced within that amount. Also, for the Little River Wairua Community Trust, the allocation says that there's 4,000 towards the walking festival. I think that might be an error. I think it might be 3,000 towards the walking festival. Note that
yeah, Jane here. Yes, it is 3,000 towards the walking festival.
Hi, Jane.
Hi.
So, right. So if you can, sometime through this process, if you can make sure that you've identified where there are any conflicts of interest, and we'll start with looking at the applications for which you might have some questions or comments or wish to adjust the amounts, and those will be highlighted by Leonie. So if we go through.
Are we open to questions now?
Well, if we highlight the ones that you're wanting to have a look at, and then those
I'd like to have them.
So for Akaroa Resource Collective, Littleton Community House, questions, comments, or up or down? Project Littleton, Little River Wairua Community Trust.
Yeah, I'd like to.
Yes, could you highlight that one, please, Leonie? Leaders Club, Akaroa Community Arts Council, Akaroa Heritage Festival Society.
You put a highlight on that one.
Yeah, highlight in that.
Diamond Harbour Events. Sorry, I'll get out of the way. Whereabouts are we? Diamond Harbour School, Diamond Harbour Youth, Hickory Bay, Hatuna, Little River, that's how Little River Craft Station.
Are you right? Sorry.
Littleton Historical Museum Society.
Yes, please.
Yes, me too. Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah,
Kuti Valley, Royal New Zealand Plunket, Te Whare Tāwhiri,
Yes, please.
Littleton Arts Factory, Littleton Rec Centre Trust.
Yes.
Naval Point.
East Place.
So we'll work our way through those from the top. Little River Wairua Community Trust.
Yeah, I'm very interested. I got no question about the amount at the stage, but the wages, the staff wages, who are the staff? Are they people employed? Am I allowed to ask someone from the appropriate trust?
There is a contact for me because I am one of the staff.
Oh, that's okay.
So perhaps we go to Jane.
Yep, sure. So they have a manager for the trust who works 20 hours a week, and they also have someone who does communications and manages that kind of side of things. They have a website, they collate a lot of information around all of the activities that are on in Wairua, and that gets sent out to a lot of people. They have a website that is very regularly updated around things happening in Little River. They have, as you know, the flooding roundtable group that's been established there, that one of the key aims of that is to get regular and ongoing up-to-date information out to the community. So they do a lot of community communication. So I think, Lynn, how many hours a week is that? 5 to 10, is that right?
Yes, 5 to 10, but it's often the 10.
Yeah, so that's the wages for them. And they come, basically, they do get funding because they run a lot of community events and have a lot of other expenses that they go to other funders for. So what we traditionally have funded them for is the wages. And then because they help to support the Banks Peninsula Walking Festival, we've traditionally supported that as well.
Oh, thank you. I'm talking from structural reasons, and I think I can see Asif's mind taking over as well. But thank you for that. That's all. No conflict with.
Okay.
Noted.
So,
was there a request for a change of that?
No.
Not at this stage.
Look, I'm really keen to see those sort of things get funded because it's on the ground stuff. It's localism, and I'm even happy to see it increase.
okay.
Not with that, but
so we can unhighlight it now.
I don't know. Nigel, what do you think of item 1, Resource Collective Trust? We didn't highlight it. I would like to comment on that. Please.
So it hasn't been highlighted already?
Yeah, no, it wasn't. Yeah, I thought it was. Yeah.
Perhaps we go back to that one.
Yeah,
okay,
sorry
just
about
quickly.
that. Yeah, these guys, they are doing an amazing job. Is there a possibility that we could acknowledge the requested amount? They are heavily involved with quite a lot of community welfare projects in Accra, and for a lot of people, their trust is the go-to trust for Accra and the base.
We have, as part of the collaboration and the workshop, we actually looked at commensurate funding across the different areas, and for the big projects, you'll note all of those. If you take the 3,000 off the Akaroa Resource Collective Trust, that is commensurate with the other. If you go right
Okay,
up
so
to the
it's-
top, so it's
It's in line with the other ones.
it's in line with the other ones.
I hear you.
So that's
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So moving to Accra Heritage Festival Society. Who would like to speak
Yes,
into that?
Nigel, you got a
I've got a
conflict
conflict
here.
of interest in that.
Oh, sorry,
You go.
If possible, I'd like to raise the staff recommendation.
I
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah.
It's starting, my understanding is it's bringing something back that hasn't been happened for a long time.
Yes.
There's been a lot of cost escalation, but the
Lot of cost escalation.
positive
Yeah.
impact is huge.
It's huge, yeah.
Yeah, financial, social. for-
Yeah, increase to the requested amount, yeah.
For the full requested
Full
amount, is that what
requested
you're asking?
amount, yes, yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that's up to, was it, just one, what am I asking? 7395, okay, can we adjust that to 7395?
Thank you.
And
And
what's
it makes
next?
sense of the fund, but like I think that with, for good reasons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Next down.
Can we do it live at the point? I've got a question on that one. If we can.
Maybe we just come back to it. Let's keep rolling.
Can you unhighlight that one, please, Leonie? How that was.
Yeah. Littleton Historical Museum Society Incorporated.
Oh, yeah, I think we've probably both got something to say on this one.
Well, I've got a conflict, Ruben.
Okay.
Because I'm Friends of Te Waka.
All right.
Yeah.
Oh,
No, I am, Joe. We're allowed to talk about our friends.
Yeah, we can talk, I think we can talk about, sorry.
Can we talk
Can I ask a question, surely?
I think there's a
Can I ask a question, we just can't post on it.
As in I bought a tile. Is that what you mean by being a friend? Yeah, okay. So I've got an interest in that. I've made a contribution to the new building by purchasing a tile.
Okay.
But I haven't.
As I was going to say, that was the threshold of a conflict.
Right.
Okay, so second.
Okay, cool.
Go for your last.
So the second bit is that history is vitally important, right? And not losing it is crucial to understanding where we are today and where we're heading. There's a group of people, some of who are still on that committee, working to realise and rebuild the Te Waka building, a home for the collection of taonga that tell the story of this place. And lots of people would have, considering the difficult process they've gone through with consenting, just walked away and gone, this is all too hard. They've said this is all very hard, but they've hung in there and are doing an incredible job. And at the AGM, there's a whole new layer of people coming in to get involved in the project as well. And I think that's really exciting for their ability to realise it. This application, my understanding, is for an administrative role. And I think that we can't underestimate the value of that administrative role to build the awareness for Te Waka and building awareness that will assist with fundraising. And by fundraising, they'll actually be able to build that building. So I think investing and supporting to the full extent the application that Te Waka have put in for us as a board shows a commitment to their vision to be able to bring that building back to Littleton, and I think that would be hugely beneficial.
I agree.
So how much do they need to support that?
$1 million. No,
I think this is.
they asked for 9360. We were going to give them 5. No, we were going to give them 4.5.
How much money is left? Balance is 16, is it?
And that's your DRE.
Yes, for the year.
We've got some carry forward though from last year, how much?
There was 22,000 about not allocated, but out of that will come the 7,000 for the board projects.
And is there also better off?
Yeah, better off.
Yes, there
When's
is.
that due?
So
Is
we had
that
a
waiting
workshop,
for after the?
the board had a workshop on that, you had a briefing on that last Monday, and you're doing a workshop on the 28th, where you'll be workshopping your ideas around that. So yes, you do have some criteria, priorities.
The decision with the better off funding seems to be, do we want to like use that because it's a substantial amount? We need to look a little later. And so there's going to be a robust discussion around that. Okay, so for this one, what's the recommended? You go 7? The whole thing. For the administrative support and community engagement. 7,000.
7,500 sounds really good.
Okay, okay.
So the nature of my conflict is that I'm a member, so I'm not
Right.
I would support that project, I think, yeah.
I do draw your attention to the fact that there is a line item funding for that that group. They get $5,000 a year. So I'm just putting
Right,
that.
so perhaps the fact that we didn't give them the full amount is balance that out a little bit. Does that make sense? Or
that's up to you. I'm just putting
Yeah.
that, I'm just pointing that out to
It
you.
makes sense to me.
Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, oh, so that's Te Mata Hapuku Society Incorporated from Hall there. Who raised that one?
That was me again. Was there anyone else that raised that? I guess my thing was that when you look at what the ask was for, and I think for a small community, that facility has a really big, crucial role, particularly around resilience. And it was for lots of little costs, like useless and tea and coffee supplies and cleaning supplies and things. And I just think that's kind of what we can do, right? Is empower communities, and that does that.
We're giving over 50%, so.
I was suggesting 100%.
Which is only extra.
It'd be nice to give 100% to everyone, but we can't. So you've got to be financially, fiscally responsible. $2,000 is pretty good. 700 last time, so $2,000 is a big increase.
Should we go to 3,000 then?
The total is even way below 200, so it's 178,000. If we increase double it forward, so it will be 80. So still got 20.
Sorry.
So I'm saying that the total here is 178 for these projects. I just don't.
Yeah, decision making. You look at the.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, the balance left for discretionary response is 13,938 at the moment.
But then we've got the carry forward on top, right?
So we're doing okay.
Yeah.
15,000.
Yeah.
To take off the project, so there's another 15, so it's about 20, it's 29 sitting here at the moment.
Yeah.
In the past, you've spent between 25 and 30 every year. Last year was extraordinary, you hit the extra money.
Yeah, and it kept on being some funding that was brought forward and some returned grants and things like that. So it was extraordinary.
You don't want to, I know you have better off funding, but do keep in mind to short-change yourself in the DRF.
What I like your 3 suggestion. I don't know what other people feel about that.
Right, yeah, no one's pushed back on the 3. I think you're for 3. Thank you. Littleton Recreation Centre Trust for wages and facility manager.
So I'm just noting that my mother's a trustee, right? Like I don't think it's an out of a full-blown contract, but it's with.
Well, sounds pretty serious relationship with your mother. If you could.
Well, I just got clear. I got clear there was similar family relationship conflict on something much more costly, and so I'm confident that I probably don't have a conflict risk with me.
Okay. Who brought this one up?
Could you note that, please? Leonie, could you please note?
I'm happy not to vote on it, just to be.
Okay.
Yes, just to be clean.
It's only for wages, so you're pretty much covering the wages. Don't need to give them any more.
No, he wasn't suggesting that, it was just your own interest.
There's interest.
Okay, thank you. And highlight now, please, Leonie.
Naval Point, and that's for the life jackets for the kiddies.
Yeah, this was something Howard and I both agreed on, and I think simply on that basis, surely it would make sense that the board supported fully.
Yeah.
100.
Yeah.
Okay. No pushback on that, so that's good.
And there was another one further up.
Was it Howard was wanting to bring something else up?
Yeah, the Diamond Harbour, I know Live at the Point struggle for funding. Just wondering how supportive is they going to be getting further funding from the council for the actual event?
They've only applied to us for the
Speakers, yeah, I see that, yeah.
They haven't said yet. They normally would apply to creative communities as well for funding.
Yeah.
And they did say that they felt comfortable that they would get funding for the other items from elsewhere.
Okay.
That's why they came to us for the speakers. But they haven't talked with me in detail about where else they're going. I did discuss with them that normally they would apply for the portals and all that sort of thing.
they didn't want to come to us for that this time.
Okay, yeah.
Any community event, I think we should fully support.
Oh, you know, the advantage of this is it's an asset to the community. It's not a short-term spend, it's a long-term spend. As in, you know, they over 10 years, they'll spend, you know, save half the initial investment. So,
And what they have said is that if they purchase this equipment, it will enable them to do additional events as well throughout the year if they come up and they can get them going. Plus, it could be lent to other local groups as well, rather than hiring it and bringing it backwards and forwards from Christchurch.
It did make sense.
there is one. I see that with this, that we're paying for 2 of the speakers, and the one left over, the whatever it is, the A whatever, they'll have to come up with. If they can't come up with the funding, can they hire that one this year and then apply for funding next year for it? Can they still move ahead with purchasing, say, 2 and not the 3rd speaker and still be in positive?
Yeah, they would still go ahead, and they could definitely come back to us again another year for the other.
So
however, it would cost them, when I got them to get a quote for hire, and it would cost them pretty much the same amount to hire with the setup and travel backwards and forwards as to purchase.
Yeah.
So they would have to find that full amount to either hire it or purchase it.
So if potentially in the future we're going to maybe okay it, would that be a reasonable thought to potentially okay it now, so that saves them that money?
Yeah, makes sense. And you know, the cost of equipments, they are going up dramatically, especially all these has to be imported. The supply chain, the cost will go up. So in the future, they will be asking for more.
What's the feeling around the table on that?
Fully.
I think a lot of these things need to be up because how much money we've got in the pot. And I think I totally support this too, but maybe we should be having a broader discussion about getting that better off, half of it or a certain amount of it put in this fund so that we can address this better.
That's an idea.
How about we go up to $5,000 on it? And that gives them 90% of what they need. It's only another $1,100. And I'll just alter it to. I just hate to see them struggle. Trying because they get going for this big ticket item and struggling to get the event, because I know it is a big crowd pleaser, this event. It is a big draw card for the Peninsula.
How can you clarify how much you suggesting?
I reckon put it up to say $5,000.
Okay.
And then
it covers all the speakers.
That way, make it easier. Hopefully, they can carry on with the event, and they may come back with applying for later funds from DRF sort of scenario.
Could they contact DRF at the same time?
Yeah. No, for funding for the actual event itself.
Yeah, there's other.
It's just I don't want to see the event being held up simply because they're trying to move too far ahead into, and we're holding them back by saying a couple of $1,000.
And what's the point of having a couple of speakers and not the rest?
Yeah.
Okay, that sounds good.
I would push for the robotic cleaner for the school, but I think that's pushing the boundaries a wee bit far.
So just to clarify, was the 5 going to cover all of those 3 types of speakers?
No, 3/4 of them.
No, eight and a half.
Was going to cover the speakers. And was there a reason why we weren't going to go the whole 8?
No, that's what we always leave some for funding, don't you?
Okay.
I think it'll just run out of money. We've only got 10 grand left.
Okay.
There's going to be people that important issues coming up over the year that we need to be able to fund.
Right. Yeah.
Fiscal responsibility.
Right. So that's 5.
Ran down my throat.
And I think that's it, is it? So we just have to, do we need to move all of those decisions?
Yes, but
you do. Yep. Yes, just move it as a file.
As a file, we need a mover and a seconder. Mover, a seconder, Ruben, and all those in favour, say aye. Against, and that is received. Thank you. Carried. We get it by the end of the day.
Good on you guys. Well done. No work to go then.
Yeah.
Alrighty, let's just stealthily move on to strengthening communities fund board projects. And we've got Philippa is helping us out with this as well. And on my extra page of bits and pieces, it's page 567. Hopefully that will be helpful.
It's the attachments.
The attachments page.
Okay.
What I got is someone with the neighbours.
Yes.
I see you've only allocated 3,000. With inflation, is that enough?
Generally, that covers the applications to the level that they've been funded before, and it seems to be about the same amount as always. But there is potential if there all of a sudden were a whole lot more applications and they were wanting a whole lot more capacity within the community, that that more money could be awarded. In the past it has, probably about 4 or 5 years ago.
Okay, so it's movable based on an application sort of scenario. Okay.
And of course, these projects have all been needed to go through and make sure that there was staff capacity to be able to undertake them, and that is here. Any other questions?
I think these are pretty standard ones that we all support and want to see continue for sure. So I think we just move forward and go for a mover and a seconder. Ruben and Moana second, and all those in favour?
Aye.
All those against?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It was stealthy. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Yep, time on yours.
I'm feeling
You
a
go
bit
to the
sick
pub
now.
now.
You know,
You go to the
you
pub
gave
now.
me something. You passed it on.
No, I haven't.
I must have been sick before.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's right.
Oh, okay. Just a big thanks for advising us on that and assessing what needs doing. That's going to be tough going through all that paperwork and trying to figure out.
And telling people no, it's the hardest thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
But telling lots of people yes, very good.
That's
Well, thank you very much for your considered opinions and decisions on that.
It's quite clear that works out. But most people are happy. Okay. Area report. Ian.
Short and sweet as well. Received funding. Just been moving through the funding. Speaking of summer with your neighbours, the application was open on the 11th of August. Publicised across the city. All the boards can do that at the same time. So please promote your local communities and areas. Make sure you say to people that they can apply for funding to help with lovely activities. And you've been heavily involved in doing some submissions and passing on your wisdom and your thoughts through the Draft Tourism Environment Action Plan and cruising and prohibited times on road bylaw review. Received lots of advice. And that's it. But oh, yes, and yep, noting, of course, because it wasn't decided when the agenda was done, the lift and cruise free tomorrow evening at 7 o'clock, 7 to 9 down in the rooms, being facilitated by Chris Mooney on behalf of the board and Christchurch NZ. So you know that Lynn will be there, and the others will attend. And yeah, oh, great. And yet we have there's a really positive interaction with the community around reviewing the CSAP and looking at mitigations and potential solutions for the next season.
Is it streamed?
Yeah, I was going to ask that. It would
No,
be really
there's
good.
nothing, we don't have. any
Could
of
it
that
just be
technology
recorded
set
even
up.
so that, I don't know.
No, we don't. Maybe I'll be sweet.
I'm thinking there's a lot of people on National Road who are really interested in the authority.
I can think of at least.
I could probably find the meeting with something that I don't know.
There'll be some notes.
There'll be some notes. There'll be
Yeah.
some
Are you
notes.
going?
No.
Oh, yes, we are moving to the area report to be received. Yep, Ruben seconded. Nigel. Right, all those in favour say aye. And that is carried. Okay, so next we have our elected members information exchange. To go round and around, or shall I just do pick some popcorn? Let's go around.
The decisions of a chairman. What are we going to make? I don't know. How do you handle it?
2 minutes per person.
We'll start off with Blue Island. She's smiling at you.
Favouritism now. Favouritism.
Goes around.
Yeah.
Okay. Not too much. Our Rākaihautū school proposal that's been held in Diamond Harbour tomorrow night. Unfortunately, it's on at the same time as the first.
Oh, so where's that being built?
Diamond Harbour.
You would talk and hours.
The green room.
Unless I, would I hold it?
Yeah.
I haven't read it. I haven't read it.
Okay.
Okay.
But
if I could.
Again, several reports of vehicle break-ins in Diamond Harbour and Business Bay over the last few weeks. I made a boy racer report on Saturday last week. Someone had gone over the weekend off me. So I've been having a bit of a chat with the young boys up there. They were very lovely. I was very nice to them. I felt sorry for them. Apparently they were trying to avoid some rubbish on the road, which I never saw. The guy who lived in front of them somehow managed to miss it. But I called the police as well, but there wasn't anyone in Littleton. This was about 8 o'clock in the morning. And I thought that we had these results. Never mind, somebody would have phoned me from Central. Yeah, so
has it gone?
but yes, they actually paid to get the car out themselves. So I was up there making sure that they were doing that. But lovely, lovely young guys. Yeah, I felt sorry. Almost bought me.
Took them home.
Yeah. I know.
So you wanting the staff to double check about the hours?
Yeah.
Interesting the discussion we had about the lease with the down here with the men's shed. I was going to have some discussion around that. It's having security around the leases of the property. If we could have maybe a briefing around how that works, because the butcher's shop in Aotearoa, that lease has got about 6 months to run. And there's no security with the business.
Yeah.
You know, whether or not leases could be on like an LTP cycle and with three-year notice period to move out. It seems so sudden to run it right to the wire, then run another lease. I think the bowling club would be in a very similar position, and they run right to the wire. I don't know, it's that timing about giving continuity and security to the leases.
Yeah.
I don't know what that question is, Ben, but
Do you have a specific question about the butcher's
the
lease?
butcher's shop. Yeah, well, if it could be all over the place. It could be with all the properties, council properties and their leases. They think that run right to the wild, and they're trying to sell the business and they don't have a lease.
We're talking about reviewing it well beforehand so that they're
Certainly
in a
got
better
some
place.
continuity and security around
Yeah.
leases for, I guess, iconic businesses, particularly. You know, this business has been going as a butcher shop for over 100 years.
Yeah, and they've got big asset to move around in such a short time. Yeah,
Yeah.
I
So
agree.
you'd like some
Just
information about what the policy
I was
is,
dying to ask
what the
the
policy is.
visitor this morning.
Yeah, because it's quite specific of what you're asking really, because council would have thousands of leases.
Oh, I know that.
So, so they won't be all timed, they couldn't be all
No,
timed
but
to run at the same time.
where
because you'd never
where
get-
it's a privileged business, it's I think like that. Where it's had a lot of permanency to it. They only picked up over, they used to be owned by Biggs Furniture and Meat, we was sold
Okay,
to them.
should we get some specific,
Just
specific
on
information
that one.
about
I
that?
think that one particularly, yeah.
Right.
Was that all, Nigel? Did you get
No,
one?
no.
Yeah.
But there's no swimming signs on the beaches in Aotearoa. And everyone doesn't believe it. I mean, I swam there as a kid when the sewage was raw sewage was going in the harbour. It didn't do any.
And all was sweated as a kid and that was a kid.
They've been there for months and months, and I know historically in the winter with the sewer system, it used to overflow into the sea, and they would put the signs up. And they just seem to be sitting there. And I don't think with the millions they've spent on the pipe structure over there, fixing that seepage into the sea, I would have thought that would have been addressed by now. So whether we could have some sort of a briefing around that to see. I don't want to see those signs up in the summer on the swimming beaches if they not necessary.
That's the question, are they being left when unnecessary?
This is the same thing that happened in Cass Bay too. With regard their signs when there was nothing wrong with the water.
And doesn't have it in some places when it's like other areas or other things.
When we can test it and they say that it's unsafe, then there's not a lot the Christchurch City Council can do about it.
No, that's right. I don't know if they're testing
we
it.
have to push back on them. Yeah.
The Cass Bay was the level, the frequency of testing. If there's bad tests, it should be another one more regularly. But they left it for what, 2 weeks or something before they redid it again.
No, that's how long
They
the
had
test
been told
goes.
loud and clear that their testing regimen is not community oriented, let's just say. So there's been pushback there if we want to keep pushing back.
I think it's more of a briefing. You want a briefing to know how it works, is that right?
Yeah, but we're very supportive of unsafe to have the signs there. But not of it, it's crucial to the economy of Pātaka. You know, have a swim in the summer. I don't really worry people in the winter, but we really want to try and get them more because they're not needed.
People have got to believe the
Beware
signs.
of the great white sharks out of the head when you had to swim into the dolphins. That doesn't go up.
Good point.
That's me.
Thank you. Great, thank you.
After that, I'm just going to be a depressing, aren't I?
Are you always depressing?
Oh. Oh, well, I'll be positive. I'll be positive then.
Little ray of sunshine from Kaiwaru.
Playing Howard's.
Governors Bay Residents Association brought up the intersection of Jetty Road and Merlincott Street Avenue, Crescent. There's concerns, there's been a couple of fender benders that area, and it's difficult to see round, so could there be some better signage or a giveaway sign or some sort of painting on the road just to slow people down in that area? If Roading could have a look at it to maybe address the issue. Does it make sense?
Well, it does, but I'm not allowed to comment about really.
Hey? Sorry?
Is this just recent, like pressures or?
I don't know. It was brought up at the Residents Association, so I'm just passing on information that was brought up to me. So it's obviously an area of issue, so it's obviously.
Obviously it is to them.
And maybe because of all the work down at the jetty too, so.
That's quite the school, isn't it?
Yeah, around the back of the school, yeah. It was brought up to me, I don't know anything about it.
And have they logged anything? Did you say please log a thing?
No, they just emailed me and I've just think. So you want them to what?
You want them to, to email, instead of emailing you, they could do that, but they could also give you a ticket number for having let the council know. Because you're not the,
I've got nothing to do with the council. It's nothing to do with me. I'm just representing their feelings to the council.
Yeah. So that's a specific job that could be logged, is what I'm saying. So the sooner that they logged, I don't know how long ago they met, but they could already have that logged in the system to be looked at.
So you want them to go take a photograph and snap send solve it?
Yeah, or just email, info@ccc. This is a.
Okay, now I'll email them back and tell them that I've got to send it in.
Thanks.
There's another one with the state of the foreshore track, which Tyrone can deal with. He's on that board, obviously, head to head. And there's a bridge on the foreshore track between Governors Bay and Sandy Beach. It's been blocked off by the council due to damage or something. It's been blocked off for a long time, but residents seem to be moving safety fences and using it. So maybe council needs to look at moving forward on getting some repairs done to that for a health and safety issue.
Can I just, I was asked to pass on, if I may, in response to the foreshore track, the Allendale, that staff wanted to let you know that they that they're investigating that. So that was that came through on Friday to us.
Okay, so they're investigating that. You want to snap things off for the road and the bridges.
Well, I'll go back and add the Sandy Beach, Governor's Bay part, because it's not the same track, but it's.
Yeah, it's further around the other way, yeah. No, sweet as, thank you very much. That was the only other thing. Oh, there was discussion about Allendale RMC and the responsibilities with the new, of the members with the new incorporated societies, the new laws come in, if they can get details of what they are, but then I just put them on to Andrea and told her to contact him.
Great.
So I assume that's all for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Awesome.
Yeah, thank you. Very well. 3 small items. 2 flooding related and 1 other. The first one is, I think I raised with you both about the Kokorata flooding. That stream, has anything been done around there?
Didn't you go out with a meeting? Well, I did. We're going to take a run. Yeah, I mean.
Yeah.
No, it's just a thought. So you might, come in. No. No.
Do you not have
I drove, so it was,
He's offering to do that. Schools.
I'll just say that the mayor is supportive of the work that needs to go on there to achieve the community outcome.
Yeah.
So it's really a case of, I'm in contact with Carl Crofts. It's just about working through that. No way has to happen.
That's all good. Yeah. Good that you can come.
So, but we're still working because the board have made a resolution about that. About getting about coordination in response to issues. So that was still there. That's right.
Okay. The second one is the last flooding event in Devotional and the one previous. That school area that floods, and there is a art studio and physio in that next to the showground, and the bridge was blocked, and both times it flooded the school and the physio in that whole building. And I got footages and I visited on site as well. So I will share with you. They are asking because they had access to school and preschool as well next to it. They were asking if there is some, groundwork could be done to stop that flooding happening. It just covers both school on the left-hand side and the showground on the right-hand side, and that building, which was Plunkett building, just right in the middle. So it floods on either sides across the state highway and into the river.
Does it flood into the buildings?
It floods to the ground on the school, and I didn't ask, especially if it floods inside.
Right through into the.
Yeah, they can't access their car park because the car park is a bit lower than the road, so that whole area floods.
But state highway, is that what you're saying?
So the stream flows down, and then the bridge on the state highway, it either blocks or it's not big enough to take the water out, so it just floods that whole area.
Backs up.
Yeah.
Backs up and around on the road and goes.
Yeah, and then on the right hand, the showground, on the left, it is the school.
So has there been a CSR put in? Even if you put it, even if it's what the time for the innovation council things they've solved, it still gets to what the time, just like your Bayview Crescent issue that you had.
Yep.
Baywater.
Oh yeah, that flooding issue. Yeah, yeah.
So it's exactly the same process, isn't it?
Okay, so raise that and then share with you.
Yeah, and nothing's been done sort of after
Well,
6 weeks.
Bay Harbor View still hasn't been raised. Actually, I met that lady at the school last Monday. So they said it has flooded twice their house since that was put through. And the last item is Nigel and I have been, people have been chasing us around in Accra. So I just want to raise, read one statement, and it has been going around for almost a year. And recently it has taken a bit of momentum. It's about, they are asking to put some money aside in the LTP multiple years to promote Accra in the Bay so that they employ someone and the funding will go to promote tourism businesses on the peninsula.
Very interesting. That's why I brought up that comment about Wairua Trust.
Yes.
Because there is no
So
money
it's
to
basically
report.
similar model.
Yeah.
And similar amount of money is required to do the same work on Accra and the Base.
There has been a lot of work done in a submission, and I think that submission, if we can get it brought forward into the next meeting in Accra to start the momentum, would be really good in that discussion.
And then the way forward, how do you suggest this? At the moment, I've got email, phone calls. How do we direct this so that we achieve what we are intending to achieve?
The trust was founded from a community need. So some people on the ground said, yep, let's do this. They did the paperwork and then they started applying for funding.
It's simple as that, really. I think they need to come for, it'd be good to see where it's going, because let's face it, ADP used to be the Produce Association, and they used to look after events and funding events because they were a community trust. And they turned into ADP. There's no money there going into that. There's nobody being employed to do it. ADP is basically pretty much bankrupt. It's probably only got about a year to go if it doesn't reinvent the management of marketing with the community.
Oh, I'll definitely come on to the trust meetings and figure it out. Yeah.
So Jenny sums that up?
Yeah, pretty much there's some, and there is a long letter, and I will forward it to everyone. And then possibly if you could advise us where and how we move forward,
So
in getting funding allocated in the long-term plan.
Yeah, so you've got a new group of people in Accra, representing Accra and the Bays around tourism, did you say?
Not just tourism, businesses.
All sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
And there's some really interesting words in the proposal. Very interesting.
So like the Little River Community Trust, is that what you mean?
Very similar. And it's being heavily involved with discussions with the current trust with Kerry Little as well.
The key ask is that to have some funding allocation in the long-term plan so that it is sustainable going forward in the long run.
Okay, well, we can put that on your long-term plan list for the board. Because you have a list when you get ideas and suggestions or when you bring stuff forward, we add it to your growing list of things that you may or may not want to, or that you want to consider, including in your long-term plan submission to council. So that's one. And the second is, of course, they can do their own submission on the long-term plan, which is early next year. When that's available. But in the meantime, it sounds like they actually need to get up and running. So they may need some support to set up as a legal entity.
Yes, that's
all right. So then my Accra and the base advisor will work alongside them. So Steffi will support them. And she can also provide some advice around funding that might be available. If they need some funding to get set up, they can certainly apply to the board's DRF to become incorporated, to get started.
This is big. This is really big.
Right, really, really big.
Really, really big.
Really, really.
Not just really.
Not chasing dogs down the street. It's really big.
Like I don't know how many. It's basically there are people they physically chase us around. It's like no matter where we are, it's just.
So there's a lot of people involved who are really keen for this.
Only one way in and one way out.
And
Like
they- and they clearly
You can't hide.
Yes.
No, I stopped going to it.
No wonder you want to upgrade the marine infrastructure.
Well, you can tell them now that you're doing the next step and it's going to be a process and
Yeah.
just to trust them that you're doing the best. thing.
Oh, that's good.
And
Yeah.
when a submission to the community board and value.
Well, I think at some stage, I think it's good for, a group, people to come along and talk about their aspirations and
Yeah.
ideas. It's the kind of thing they could do at a hui a hapuri.
Yeah.
Next time we have one in Aparoa, a good idea. We had, going back a few years now, Lumiere, when they proposed to, before they did that, they came along and spoke to the board about it.
Little River Trust is coming for a
Yes,
briefing at
they're
some point
doing,
too, so.
that's one, yeah.
That's
Yeah, to
good.
raise
Yeah.
awareness.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Where did we get up to? Oh, was that all you have there, Asif?
Yes, yeah, thank
Okay,
you.
well
That's
done.
awesome. Thank you.
Ribbon.
Cool, thank you. I've probably a few things that I think that are really good that we're seeing happening around Littleton are worth noting. One is that the mitre has been demolished. I'm sure someone else.
You can remember that and you can say it again.
You're stealing his thunder.
And I just wanted to take this opportunity.
Steal his thunder.
No, to single out the great work of our member of our council who has progressed that, and hopefully we'll speak to it shortly.
Segue.
Next on my list.
Wait, now slam.
I also think it's great to see the pedestrian improvements in the build outs and everything in and around London Street. And I know that we as a board approved those some time ago, but just actually seeing them happening now is great. And the highlight would have to be the kennel that got built around the dog, which I think it's probably gone viral on Facebook. You see it everywhere, but also the fact that the kennel now has a temporary dog on it as well. I think is great. So that's just Littleton in a nutshell on that street corner.
I know that there has been some pushback via media by a prominent local resident in the press today, and just probably caught up on that.
I can imagine how that might be. No doubt. Maybe we need to build a little soapbox next to the dog out of the supplies from the timber shelter. The other thing was just that Te Waka, who we talked about in the DRF, Peter and the committee have been in touch with an invitation to the board to go and visit on site. To have a look on the
It's
ground.
been noted.
Yeah, which I think is like an on the ground briefing request, which I think is great. I think the cruise meeting tomorrow will be excellent, and I'm very keen to be here for that. And the only other thing was that I ran into another great local down on the main street at lunch, who mentioned that there is a, you may have this term, a seafarer welfare submission process underway currently.
Yes.
And I just wondered if as a board we should make a submission to that.
Seafarer welfare.
Yeah.
Submitting to who?
Yes, we absolutely, yeah, I can provide details on that. I mean, I thought that I would actually forward that, that's okay. But you're absolutely right.
So that's around raising the levies or making sure the levies are.
There are options on how the levies are distributed.
Yes.
So it's a making submission process. I thought I'd put that through actually.
Was that your?
That's me.
Yeah.
Keep Christchurch Beautiful has the awards on August 15th, and they sent an invite to everyone. Is anyone going? That like, and they'll just recognize individuals, community. Yeah. Yeah, that'd be good to keep. So yeah, I would encourage that. And out of that sort of discussion around, keeping or beautifying your neighborhood, we're thinking maybe something around Banks Peninsula or Littleton, because if we find a champion in that space, so they're quite open to those talks and maybe groups of persons in Littleton to, it all started around, keeping your area clean, litter free and stuff like that. So
I used to bring staff over once a year with a big trailer and pick up rubbish on Cass Bay and.
Yeah.
Of course, yeah.
Yes, that's right. It's not too late.
They're voluntarily doing it. You can buy them lunch.
That's right. And collaborating with like Conservation New Zealand and stuff like that. So it's all quite exciting. If, you know, it's good to work with groups then on your own. Snap Salmon Sod definitely works. The big rain came in Cass Bay. There was building and construction happening. The beach was brown as snap sand and salt went through, and yes, people came and ECAN came, council came, and there's good progress there.
I'm hearing the opposite.
Yeah, so that sort of stuff really was. I've heard a lot about Ikaroa stuff after the rain too recently. Safety in Littleton, just following like things happening in Littleton. There was like recent car theft. I think the dairy's got roller doors here. So recent ram raid. Talk about supermarket, maybe pharmacy, build bollards and things. So I mean, these conversations probably are coming closer to home. The army came to Cass Bay last weekend. They put out information. Council put out information. The Residents Association put out information, and it went well. So well, yes, they shot rifles at 7:30 in the morning. People just said, "Oh, what was that sound?" We're like, "Oh yeah, you know, it came in." So it's okay, like, you know, good communication.
Like shooting geese on it.
Yes, that's right. Because what happened was they did a walk up to up the track to anyhow, and then the army literally escorted the group of community members past the site to carry on the walk out. So it was all very fun, I think, but it's good. And civil defence meetings. I think there's some stuff in Littleton, and they're just looking for community champions like in Cass Bay and stuff. So it's good.
The same thing over.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And then just again, I think dog poo on the rec grounds is just such an ongoing. Yeah, so can't really know that.
Have the army shooting dogs.
Because especially when sports and stuff happens at the rec grounds. Such a mess.
I picked up all my dog shit.
No, I haven't, because we don't do it, but I will, reach out.
Because I think once, if people see a few of them, they're like, "Oh, nobody cares with the internet." But if it's tiny, maybe
before they play, they walk around and pick it up. But then it's terrible when kids get home.
Is there no dog exercise
It's
area
such a
around
problem,
there?
but
Is there a dog exercise area?
no.
No, the board started to work on that a few
Yeah,
years
a lot of work
ago,
been
up the road. There's some council owned land up there.
Yeah, we've had dealings, haven't we? And, I mean, the logical place is probably the rec ground, but that's nothing that we can really pursue now because, you know, it's undergoing redevelopment. So I think it's just something. As far as I'm aware, as far as I'm aware, the sort of the dog booking issue is really just it's not really an issue. It's from the people
Right, yeah, no, and then go to those that.
it's kind of flared up for a while. Now people just
then
walk. Yeah, it's kind of.
Hey, Jeremy. Yep, done. Thank you. All right.
Yes. So as Ruben mentioned, the MITRE is. I mean, that's actually pretty sad, to be honest. Like, it's a landmark in town, but look, it's long been on the agenda for coming down. I just really think staff have done an amazing job in getting it to this point. That took some effort behind the scenes, so it's just really positive to see. And finally, hopefully the community will get access back to that bit of footpath that they've been denied for the last 11 years.
Wow.
Kathy talked about supermarket bollards. I'm going to catch up with Rob there, who's the owner of the supermarket, later on this week, actually, to sort of just talk through that a bit more. I know that Anna Partridge has been to Sam as well. We've been communicating on that. I went to the soft opening of the Governor's Bay Jetty. Not Sunday, but the Sunday before that. I mean, what an amazing job
they've done there is really beautiful. The formal opening will be next month. And the Mayor came along and, look, to your point earlier, Nigel, like I think we're really fortunate that the Mayor takes a real interest in Banks Peninsula matters all over, not just in Akaroa, but around the Richmond Harbour as well. So that's really pleased that he does do that. I went and met the school principals from the schools on the Pass out there, that ARCO group, last week, just about sort of, engaging and keeping those relationships. We've had met Vicky, who's the new principal at Akaroa Area School. I've been doing quite a lot of work with Deb, who's the principal of Devotionals School. We've had a bit of a win lately with getting road signs, bus, children crossing, bus sort of safety signs up on the Summit Road around Akaroa Harbour. We're also a couple of little projects that we're sort of working together on, the big macro carpet hedge out the front of the school and the way that wastewater is distributed on the golf course. So, but they're all conversations to be panned out, but just to let you know, I'm talking to the principals there. Just on the boy racer thing, so we just keep chipping away. I've been encouraging staff to take another look at the intersection there of Dyers Pass, Governors Bay Road and Lane Road, that intersection there, Burnout Central. So I'm hopeful that we might get something done to that intersection to help at least mitigate that particular problem. I don't have a time frame, but it's whatever it is, like something that works up tyres if we're doing a burnout. So, look, that's a conversation anyway. It's just to keep you.
Let me know before they put that on.
Actually, it's just worth noting, really, just on the general state of the road around the Inner Harbour route. Like, that's something that often crops up in conversations. The quality of it, that it's failing, and all that sort of stuff. I think probably one of the things that we need to remember is that up until within living memory, that was a dirt track, or a dirt road all the way around the harbour. A dirt road that's basically just had asphalt put on top of it has never properly been surfaced, so it's always going to be poorly done and vulnerable. So that's just something that we have to be mindful of. Like, to resurface the whole thing to the standard of a motorway is so far in the millions and hundreds of millions and probably billions of dollars that it's just completely outside of the scope of what we can do. So that's just a sort of a heads up there, really. I can do this through the Office of the Chief Executive, but again, just in terms of carrying us all along on the ride, it would be quite good to get just an update on what's happening with the Akaroa Sports Hub. Is there anything Akaroa team?
They had
It's progressing. I
yeah.
understand things are going to crack on quite soon. So I'm not sure.
The Mayor's offered to come over.
The project manager has been, I think, assigned, so they were talking about having a meeting with person, it's happening at some stage.
Rather than create an email trail, I just thought I'd just chuck that on the table, just so that it's just be quite good just to
I will keep it
cracking on.
Yeah.
I'll check on that. I went to the Project Littleton AGM a couple of a week and a half ago, and this is just to note that another smooth AGM, a great community group, and just a shout out to them. They do so much good work around the community, so really just want to keep supporting them. The really bad weather that we had 2 weeks ago, again, a shout out to the roading crews. Again, like, we get a lot of, often it's like, well, what are they doing here? What are they doing here? Well, I mean, we just had floods, slips, you name it. They were out there clearing roads, opening up communities. I mean,
they were very good,
and they did a great job. And the community feedback's been really, really great. So it's just worth just giving a shout out to those teams for doing all that. It is a challenging world that we're in. Just today, I was fielding a call from the Governors Bay resident who's like, well, there's a slip on Dyers Pass Road and some rockfall. What are you doing about it? And it's like, well, okay, but we're working through it. But there's a lot of tasks that need to be addressed, and and the teams are working really, really hard on that. And I'll probably say that about stormwater issues as well. We do, again, we have a lot of discussions around stormwater issues. We live on hills, so there was a lot of runoff. I have usually got juggling probably about half a dozen of these individual issues at any given time, and they're not always necessarily down to council infrastructure, and sometimes they are down to private private homeowner reasons. So it's really worth just sort of kind of understanding that and sort of having that in the head, just as you talk to residents, if you're out there and doing it, that council staff do work really, really hard on a lot of this stuff, and it's not necessarily always a council issue, and you just have to work with residents through that. And that's me.
Awesome. Can I just say a comment? Madam Chair?
Sure.
Through the chair. Yes, and your positivity and action has been well noticed in Akara. And thank you.
Well, thanks so much.
Thank you for that. Something I forgot to mention too was the local tourism conference, and I was actually quite moved in some of the subjects that were bravely discussed at that conference, and particularly the presentation from the Takapatiki on the Takapatiki project was sensational. I didn't even know about it. And I've come around the corner, there's Reckon and Kelly Tikia, who's a doctor, and she's doing all the historic side of it. She's a lecturer and obviously a direct descendant of the first person to sign the treaty in Akara Harbour. Her talk on that history was open, honest, and very, very good and accurate. And followed up by Rick Tainu doing a presentation on the governance group and how it was formed and what the plans were going forward. And it was really, really great. It was fantastic to see that, and that's a real Peninsula thing going on, and a real reflection of how positive that governance group was. It's been very, it's been very effective at getting to where it is.
That was to hundreds of mayors and elected members from all over the country as well. So there was like a real
fantastic
championing of that situation and that place and the group that did that. So,
yeah, and the work that's gone on behind it. So, but the flooding conversations was great. It was great content. The work is just fantastic.
Rick does a power just on that.
He's great, and he's very positive, and he says the way he works with the council is very positive.
just a couple of last things with me. Sorry. So we've got a Little River a date for the resilience meeting. There's a civil defence planning resilience meeting there on the 24th of August, 7 o'clock. Hopefully at the Rugby Club rooms. So that there's kind of at the beginning, kind of figuring out where people are at, what their needs are, what their questions are, and then trying to figure out from there what we do with that. So that's a combination of staff. Like Jane, who's Wariwa, and then there's also staff from town, who's Andrew, Civil Defence. And then there's the locals, so Emily, she's a local, and Marina, a local. So it's kind of like a combination of everybody just putting their businesses together and getting it done.
Thursday, what?
Thursday the 24th, 7 o'clock. Personally, I see this is the number one thing I want to focus on, because I just feel like just to empower the community to be able to help each other out is the way to go at this stage. We had a planting date on yesterday, and that was at Tumbledown Bay, and it was a collaboration between the Runanga and the parks manager staff there, planted hundreds of plants. Heaps of people turned up to planting, and it was a great day to collaborate and get that stuff done in a particular area. And I think that's all I have else to put here. Something popped up about Maritime New Zealand consultation closes the 16th of August regarding funding Seafarers Centre in Littleton. So do you want to submit something?
So yeah, so it's actually a consultation on the delivery of by consulting on proposed changes to maritime levies and all pollution levies. There is a background paper on the options for delivery of seafarer welfare services. So it seems like this is the idea. So the Maritime New Zealand have said, well, we think this is how it could be funded. And we've got an obligation to do that, you know, some funding for these subsidiary services. I mean, this is what I've just really, so I might have to that, but I would suggest that in the past, this board has supported really strongly in trying to get, in fact, we've funded this Imperial Centre before Maritime or LPC picked it up. So that, you know, if there was energy to put some thought into a submission on this by the 16th, my staff can put it together. But in order to do, we need to approve now that you'd like to make a submission.
Because we've also done submission that's due on the 28th. We agreed last meeting. Some people wanted to do something. Off my radar, but I'm sure it's noticed in the system. And you'd have to promise to provide feedback to staff, not just say, yeah, that's a good idea, and then not provide any email responses. When she asks, we get, yeah. So does that sound like something that you would want to do?
I wholeheartedly support that.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd have it supported, but I'm really leaning heavily on the content from over this side of the hill.
Well, someone would need to have a chat with John Lister, I suggest. And to see if they've done yeah, to be able to do some. Yeah, yeah. So you can agree to make an agreement. Okay, so you can agree to make a submission, and when you've that submissions committee can be called, and we can get that stuff happening, and then you'll approve it by the era for next time.
Like that. That's the way to do it next year, because I thought that I pushed that along.
It was just a fortuitous, like a sushi shop.
The Lord works in mysterious ways.
That's what I said. Going around the factory and we had cat litter on the side, just leaving, and the truck went round.
Great, so we'll just finish with a karakia unless there's something like popped into someone's mind that's really important to say right now. Nope, okay.
It's a risky question.
Yeah, I love it.
I love that. Una here,
ki te uru tapu nui, kia wātia, kia mana, te nākau, te tina, te wairua, te ara whakata. Oia rā I rongo, a kaia ake ki roka, kia tina, tina.